do?
I suppose I try to communicate philosophical ideas that are kind of interesting and weird and cool.
So what would you consider to be your biggest argument against the existence of God?
Yeah, I find myself these days spending more time speaking to atheists about the plausibility of God than I do doing the opposite.
But there is this higher power that, if we allow in, can guide us in a way that we could never even comprehend trying to do so. Psychedelics
Changes everything about the way you see the world, where you hear the world. And so the one thing that it definitely tells us is that our ways of seeing the world, it doesn't have to be that way in principle. What if the wall doesn't even exist? Can I prove it? Can I prove that I'm not in a simulation?
But at some point, like, people just deep in too much shit. Like you, like,
Whoa.
you said you didn't believe the table exists. At what point?
No.
No. At what point? No, let me talk.
Wind your neck in, son.
At what point do you have to just accept? Fucking accept.
Why can't you stay organised? I've experienced this myself, and it's called chronic impulse control, where you prioritise short-term actions like...
Here he is.
You fucking showed it.
Yet another podcast.
Yeah, another one.
Oh yeah, what did you get?
What's on that side? Like, look
Pitch
red.
side? It's through there? No?
No, we're floor 1.
Oh, the club.
Club.
Low IQ, Jack, Joseph and...
Radio
Anderson.
Rufus.
That rings a bell. Yeah.
Rufus Rice.
Yeah, fun. This is cool, man.
Sweet, alright, we rolling?
Oh, we going?
Ready to rumble?
We're just rock and roll.
Alright then, Alex O'Connor.
Wait,
What?
is everyone staying in the room for this episode?
They can do.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
calm, that's
why
all
not?
good.
Yeah.
Alright then, so Alex O'Connor.
What's up, man? What's up, guys?
Firstly, you're popping at the moment. Like, you're absolutely blowing up the place. 8.5 million views on your last video.
No, stop it.
It's crazy, but like, what is it that you actually do?
Yeah, good question.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess broadly I'm a philosophy YouTuber.
Okay.
And a podcaster too, because everybody is these days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose I try to communicate philosophical ideas that are kind of interesting and weird and cool to people who otherwise either wouldn't bother looking into it or would find it a bit sort of like difficult to get into. It all seems a bit sort of dry and academic and whatnot, which a lot of it is. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff in there too, which I try to communicate to people.
Yeah, because we see a lot of it is like obviously taking on religious people.
Yep.
And why, trying to debunk their arguments for why God may exist or their religion may have any validity.
Sure.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
What is that all about? Are you saying you're an atheist? You don't believe in any of that stuff?
Yeah, I prefer the term agnostic these days because I'm
What does
agnostic.
agnostic
about
mean?
It means that you don't know. I mean, so etymologically, like the actual origin of the word, like gnosis is the Greek word for knowledge, and so to be agnostic, gnosis, without knowledge. In the same way that atheism comes from the word theos, which means God. A means without, so it's without God. Atheism.
Got you.
This is going to be a lesson for everyone else. Like,
So-
our audience have very...
Theo.
This is like two different worlds colliding.
That's why they call it atheism, because it's sort of etymologically just means without God. Agnostics will be people who don't say like, I believe there's no God, I'm an atheist, there's no God. Say like, I don't know, man. How on earth could we possibly know? And some agnostics take that approach. Some agnostics don't think like, there's no way we could know. They just think, look, there's loads of information on this side and loads of information on this side. And personally, for myself, I haven't made my mind up. That makes you an agnostic as well. But there are also agnostics who say it's like impossible to know.
I know we're going to delve deeper into that a lot in this show, but can I just ask, like, how are you here? Like, how have you actually got to where you are now? Because that's quite a unique and niche like route to go down, especially on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for it, man. Like it is quite niche, and like I say, it can be really boring. Like a lot of philosophy is quite technical, or
Hey, for anyone watching, first of all, yo, what's up? Glad you're here. I'm testing out using Streamlabs for this stream, and this is definitely a different type of live than I've done in the past. But if you'll bear with me, I'm trying to figure out if my mic is picking up way too much of the input from this video. But yeah, also, please let me know, and then yeah. We're going to watch Alex O'Connor, who's like a notable YouTube atheist, discuss faith and philosophy. And I'm doing this while I do some coding in the background. So, yeah, hop on. Let's hang out. Yeah, without further ado, just let me know, please, if the audio is getting kind of weird on your end. Because if it is, I need to go throw on some headphones, try to figure that out.
seemingly irrelevant for a lot of people. You're talking about these weird thought experiments and trolley problems and stuff. And like, who cares, And I think that what I try to do is find the nuggets of useful information and interesting information, which has obviously worked. Like, I think people realize that, although I used to be a bit more of a debate bro, used to be more like, let's rough and tumble on religion and stuff. These days, I'm just much more interested. I'm genuinely excited by hearing people's ideas on things. And be it a philosopher that I've got on my podcast, or a physicist who, for some reason, has agreed to start talking about their philosophical worldview, or it's just some random person from a completely different field, everyone's got something kind of interesting to be like dug into and pulled out. And so I think I'm hoping that what people see in me is a genuine curiosity.
Did you study philosophy?
Yes, philosophy and theology. It was a joint honours.
Where?
At Oxford. Very fancy, very fancy. I'm really grateful for that too, actually, because my grades completely different field. First time I did my everyone's got something kind of interesting to be like dug into and pulled out. And
Bad. All right. I wish I had to check something.
Big ideas don't come easy. But when you get one, use that moment of clarity.
Oh, me and you too, brother.
yeah, right on. In fact, the only one I didn't was critical thinking, so like learning logical fallacies and stuff, and that one I got a D in. But I overslept one of the exams, further maths. I overslept it, and it was at 1 p.m, and I just didn't make it. And
Are you saying you used to be a bit of a bum?
yeah, 100%. But I had to redo
it
the whole
college?
thing. This was, so like sixth form.
Yeah.
It was at secondary school, but then I had to redo them because you've got to stay in education until you're 18 these days, right? And so had to go back, and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to give it a proper crack this time. So did them again, got ABC for AS level, and then just about got A star AA, which is what you need to get.
What
to
do you think
Oxford.
switched in your head though? To suddenly be like, oh, I care now, or I want to try now. What do you think that was that made you switch?
It might have been having a YouTube channel, in that I started this when I'm like 16, 17, and when I applied for university, I think it probably had about 150,000 subscribers. And so it was awesome. I was like, this is really, really cool. And I thought, you know what? I do kind of want to pursue this because I'm doing the philosophy thing online now. And I think if I want to not only be taken seriously, but also have interesting things to say, I want to study this. And I thought, you know what? I've got to crack at this because my grades aren't great. But if I can write a personal statement that's got this cool YouTube thing going on, like maybe it could work. And so that motivated me. But also just having good friends, having friends who are ambitious and say to you, you know what, mate? Like maybe you like could do that actually. Like, Not like filling your head with pipe dreams, but sort of realistically, like, yeah, give it a go. And, I had friends who studied hard, and I studied hard with them, and that was that.
So you sort of used university and studying that to sort of give yourself credibility on YouTube.
It's not just about credibility, because it's one thing, like you could say, I just want to get a degree so that I can say, listen to me, I've got something to say. But there is also the element of actually feeling like I'm more credible, because I've got the actual like educational material. Like I've learned things that even if I was never allowed to tell anyone I had a degree, I still have benefited greatly from it because I just learned so much. Things that I am happy to share with people these days. So it was a good decision, I think, to go to university. Also stopped me from getting in too much of a YouTube bubble. I mean, I don't know what it's like for you guys. Like it seems like you've got a whole group of people, like you're all friends, you know each other. There's like 16 billion podcasts all filming in the same building. For me, it's like in a room talking to a camera on my own, and if I'd have just kept that up, decided I'm going to do that for the rest of my life when I was like 17, who knows, I might have never come out of that room. I might still be in there now, just tapping away on my computer,
So what is your like motive to wanting to make content and communicate to the world? Is it that you're trying to get the point of view across of like maybe to convince others of what you believe, or is it you're purely wanting to be challenged and to learn and to almost like see different points of view for your own, like, I guess, enjoyment in life? Is it?
No, I'm just kidding. It's definitely just the excitement of exploring these things. It's the kind of thing where, like, what I love is the idea that I can do what I would love to do anyway. It's that classic thing, taking what you love and turning it into a job. Like, if we were at the pub and these were pints, we could have the same conversation and it would be interesting and fun, hopefully, and I'd still be passionate talking about philosophy. If for whatever reason that I can't understand, people are interested in having an ear in on that, and that can become a job, and I can use that to then talk to even more interesting people and more higher quantities of people.
Mad ting. Alex.
Yes, sir.
I'll never sleep without loop earplugs again.
They're my ticket to an
Where do we come from?
Oof. Well, it depends on your level of explanation, right? And this is actually really important, is that whenever anybody asks a question, and you want to explain something, you know, why is this cup here? Why are we here? Whatever.
Are we here?
There are like levels. Maybe not. Maybe not. You know,
He loves it.
That's a whole thing.
We had this argument earlier.
There are levels of explanation, right? So you could say, well, why are you here right now? And I could say, because you walked in the room and sat down. That is an explanation of a kind, right? But it only goes so far. So you might also say, like, why am I here in like a biological sense? Like, how on earth do like zygotes like grow into human beings? It seems like you want to push that question all the way back, though. It depends on the context in which you're asking. If you mean like,
so
why
is planet Earth, like, why are you here right now, do you think?
I think I'm here as the result of a series of deterministic causes that probably began around the time of the Big Bang. And what exactly caused the Big Bang in the very beginning is completely outside of our current understanding. But the universe probably had some kind of beginning, and it seems to me like it's been following a set course since the beginning of the universe. It's possible that there's some randomness in the universe.
I have this YouTube video playing. What was the issue? Oh, yeah, it was I logged in and logged back out of YouTube, so now we should be Gucci. If I could get your help, one more thing before, because I know you said you were trying to go to bed. So I'm playing this video that I wanted to watch and kind of commentate on my TV, and then I have my computer where I'm doing all the mic stuff. But I don't know if my mic audio is also picking up like intense background noise, so I just want to make sure. Okay, you can't hear me because of my video. That is a good thing to know. Yeah. All right. Well, shoot. That is definitely a problem. Let me see. Can you hear me now? Love this. This is how you get started, I guess, right? Trying to figure out. Let me. Just let me know. Can you hear me now? If you can hear me now, then my problem is the fact that I've got audio coming from this. Okay, yeah, when I pause the video, my voice is coming clearly. Okay, yeah, so... Yeah, okay, the problem is legit just the fact that I have two audio sources, which is no bueno. That's no bueno. Okay, well, why don't we do this? If I, like... When you were speaking while video's running... Yeah, dude. Totally get that. And there's, like, a fat delay, unfortunately. But, let's fix that. Bro, you are just an absolute killer. I love you. This is gonna make all of our future streams so much better. There are other people here, so if anybody else wants to chime in, what's up? Currently figuring out how to best make this multi-stream happen. Okay, so what I'm going to do real quick, Dave, is I'm going to turn off the live stream feed volume, and I'm just going to play the audio from my TV out loud. Let me know if you guys can hear this. Because I want to make sure that you guys can hear the conversation of what's going on. Because the things that I kind of want to talk about are what Alex O'Connor's talking about and what Joe Weller's talking about. Because I find Alex O'Connor to be a very interesting YouTuber. I would love to, once I've grown to a sufficient size, eventually make it onto his podcast. But he's just a cool philosopher who talks about a lot of conversation around faith. And being an agnostic himself, he's, he kind of teeters the line between, discussing like the practicality of faith versus, his fundamental belief systems. And I think it's a really cool, well-rounded argument. And as someone that likes to, I guess someone that is introspective myself, it's kind of fun to hear people talk about these sort of things, regardless of what you believe in. So, anywho, let's see if this works. Dave, let me know. Can you hear this?
A lot of people look at like quantum physics and they say there's randomness there. That's disputed. And even if there were, it would still be basically out of our control how we ended up here. I think there's just a series of events which cause other events, and that goes on until we get to the present. And I think that's been going since the beginning of the universe.
But what the beginning? How do you know it's the beginning? What was before the beginning? Surely it's like before the beginning.
Well, that seems like a sensible question, right? Like what came before the Big Bang? But remember, have you ever heard of space-time? Like those words shoved together?
Space-time continuum.
Space-time continuum, yeah. So this is what Einstein did. He showed that space and time are kind of like the same thing. Well, they're like connected in that, you know, if something's really heavy and it bends space-time around it, things move slower. You know, like on Interstellar, when they go to the planet, right?
Yeah.
So time is literally affected by space, and so it seems like time is kind of a property of the universe. People used to think that there's this thing called space with objects in it, and it somehow sort of moves through.
Oh, are you saying that the delay is pretty bad? Like like everything is kind of slower than the actual, like the video itself? If that's the case, then that's probably the problem for everyone. I need to look into why that is. I don't know if that's using, if I need to use a better webcam. Could be the case. Yeah, let me know what you think about that. Talking about in the YouTube video. Let me know.
Through time, and we don't really know what this time thing is. Time is impossible to define. You know, they say that everybody knows what time is until you're asked to define it. Like, what the hell is time, right? And so, if time is just like a product of the universe, that means that if the universe had a beginning, that's when time itself began. So, if you want to ask what happened before then, nothing. That's a bit like asking what's north of the North Pole.
It's so easy to become a podcaster with Rip.
Interesting. Are you saying turn off the live chat?
Well, no.
Which if you keep going north, you go round the other.
By the time you get over the top, north will be behind you, right? You know what I'm saying? So if you have a compass and you're constantly trying to find north, and you walk north and you're like, which way's north? That way. Which way's north? That way. That way. And you get to the North Pole, and then you ask, well, which way's north from now? It's like that's. It sounds like a question that's sensible. Like I can say those words, and you understand what I'm asking. But when you think about it, it's like it doesn't make sense as a question. What came before the beginning of time might be the same kind of thing. This is just where it started. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a bit mind. It's hard to think.
So, you know the time thing you're on about.
Yeah.
So that obviously that famous.
Yes.
Like, how does that work?
Because objects bend space-time. So you can imagine space-time as like this massive fabric. So imagine like the air around us, but you can sort of picture it as this four-dimensional fabric. And the way that gravity works is that if I were to throw a ball, or if I were to roll a ball across this table towards you, Joe, then it would just roll this way, right? But imagine this table here was a big bit of fabric, and I put a huge metal weight in the middle, and it sagged like that. Then if I rolled the ball towards you, the ball would go off its course and go towards the metal thing, right?
Yeah.
Because the metal thing is like bending the fabric in such a way that although the ball is going in a straight line, the straight line itself, the line itself is bent towards the object. Yeah, that's how gravity works, right? An object which is in space, like a comet or something, is just moving in a straight line, but the Earth it's got so much mass that it literally bends the space-time around it. Right? It's
all right. Let's figure this out here real quick. Day of my boy, you are so helpful. I appreciate you. Let me see here. How do we fix this? Let's go live stream feed. All right, so I need you guys to let me know because I know that the audio sounds, I guess it sounds like it's coming from a TV, which it is. But I was trying to minimize the amount of, I guess, reverb. I have no idea if I'm using that term right. On the my mic for me to yap into the camera. But I'm going to turn that off now so we can see if the audio is any better. So 1 second here.
It's like taking the planet, putting it in space, and it's like the fabric. It's like the fabric being like bent around it, which means when that comet is traveling in a straight line, it bends towards the Earth, and the way it looks to us is that the comet is coming towards the Earth, right? That's how gravity works. Time does the same thing. Time also bends, right? So if you are near a really massive object, and it has to be massive for this to be noticeable, like a black hole.
Yeah.
If you're near a black hole, space-time is so bent around it that you can imagine, for example, you know, if I was moving from this side of the table to this side of the table, and it took me 10 seconds, and then I stretched out that fabric, and I moved at the same speed,
Taking longer.
it would take longer, even though, like, we don't perceive the stretching of the space-time because we're being stretched with it. So it would be as if I've stretched the table, but it looks the same to us, which means that it would look as though that thing's moving slower now, right? So to me, looking at this, I would see a normal-sized table, and I see a really slow-moving thing. Because it's been stretched out, I just can't see it, right? And that's what's happening near a black hole, is that space-time is being like warped and stretched so that, because it's so hard to perceive on any kind of small scale. But for example, when they sent satellites into orbit, so the thing that allows you to use GPS on your phone, they need to keep time, right? You're sending signals up and back and they need to keep time. And the scientists said that because you're sending it a bit away from the Earth and the Earth affects the way that time passes, you need to slightly alter the speed of the clock, just ever so slightly, because over years and years, it will add up. And they were right. If you send a clock here and a clock here, and I send this one up into space and it orbits the Earth for 100 years and it comes back down again, they'll show slightly different times. Not because the clocks are imperfect, but because time literally moved faster for one of them than the other. And the same thing happens when you travel really fast. When you get near the speed of light,
Earn more and expand your coverage with a practice partner you can rely on. Get the most out of your practice with Headway.
To secure victory, drivers in F1 the movie need total focus. They also need to...
time also starts changing. So if you got in a train, and that train moved at the speed of light. Now, to move at the speed of light, or just below the speed of light, you'd have to orbit the entire Earth 7 times a second. That's how fast light goes, right? So imagine you got on a train that was going around the Earth 7 times a second.
Was somebody done that experiment?
Not that experiment, because that's practically impossible. But there are
obviously. I'm just trying to
it's the good question is like, well, how do we know that this is actually, that this is actually?
Because I'm just trying to gauge, like, how can you trust this?
Yeah, in science, it's all about making predictions. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to say, right, I've got this theory. I think this is how things work, and if I'm right, then we should see this occur. And then you stake it. You say, look, I've got this claim, and we're going to test it. You don't like retrospectively explain stuff. You like make a prediction, and it comes true. For Einstein, famously, this involved an eclipse, and the way that light itself bent around a massive object, which is something that you can't observe because the sun's too bright. But in a solar eclipse, you get the opportunity to look at light of the sun like more closely. I don't know all of the details, but basically Einstein makes this prediction that if my theory is correct, we will measure this, and if classical Isaac Newton mechanics is with the speed of light thing, I think there is an interesting case, and you'll have to ask a physicist about this. But I remember hearing about these really interesting particles which have no mass or next to no mass, so they basically travel near the speed of light, and they're emitted from somewhere really far away, and we measure them on Earth. The problem is, the time it takes for them to decay isn't long enough for them to reach Earth. And I wish I knew the details. I wish I knew this would come up. I would have looked it up. There are these really interesting little subatomic particles which travel at either the speed of light or near the speed of light, but they shouldn't have enough time to get from where they're emitted to Earth before they disintegrate. But they do reach Earth. Why? Because time is moving slower for the particle, because it's moving near the speed of light. So the fact that it makes it to Earth means that, like, what we've perceived as, a year, for the particle, it's only been, 10 days. So even though it might decay after 10 days, and it takes a year to get here, it's fine because it's moving. So you can, by detecting those particles, you can be like, oh, like, that's an explanation as to why that happens. I wish I knew what particle it was. Somebody will comment.
How much proof? So that's essentially like a science experiment, and you've proved that experiment to be correct. Essentially, how much proof do you need to start believing things? Because we had an argument earlier that these boys were saying that this table doesn't exist, and I said,
asking the question of like what to trust is,
and I said sometimes it doesn't matter, because it's okay to say it is, and I know.
It was basically because I watched your existential crisis.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them is that is it the like any given Thursday thing where like the universe could have been
created last Thursday.
Yeah, that one.
And I said, I know.
He says he knows that that's not true because
it's okay to say it wasn't. Like we are all sitting around this table, and it's so good to have these discussions.
Yeah.
But we all know that the universe wasn't created last Thursday.
Yeah. Look, I think
Correct.
you're both right. Look, and I'll tell you why. Right? There's a philosopher called G.E. Moore from the 20th century, and he's famous for having done this proof. Where there's a lot of debate about whether the external world exists. Is it all an illusion? Are we living in a simulation? Or is this real? Do I actually have hands? Yeah. Is there really a table here? And some people, what they do is they say, look, I can't prove, I don't know whether there's a table here, therefore I don't know whether the external world really exists. G.E. Moore just had this like intuitive shift where he said, here's the argument. I have hands. If I have hands, it means the external world exists. Therefore, the external world exists.
Agreed.
Now, you could say, how do you know that you have hands? And
Love these unskippable ads. This is great content. I feel like one of my problems with some of that kind of argument so far, at least the way that it feels like it's going, is I know that's not like the main premise of like Alex's like belief hierarchy, because I've watched some of his other videos, but it does feel to me like a bit like I understand that we need to build like a foundation for how we construct this conversation, especially when it comes to faith and philosophy and whatever you end up believing. But I think that the idea, there are a couple things that I feel like are a bit too esoteric to include in a conversation such as this when you're on a podcast, and that is just like does a table exist? Like I understand, maybe not to the same degree because I don't have a degree in philosophy or theology, but I can say, as like just from my personal experience, like having read, different philosophy books and currently in the middle of reading the Bible, I feel like the idea of the table existing and things being relative in their existence is a little bit arbitrary when it is in regards to our experience. I think our experience, the thing that you are experiencing right now, and if we can as a community say, like, for example, he makes the argument of does the table that they're sitting at exist? Well, sure, I think maybe in the metaphysical sense, like maybe it doesn't. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but like one could make the argument that it doesn't exist. But I think that for all intents and purposes, the viewers seeing the table, you and myself and the 8 people watching my stream, plus everybody that's watched this video, and everybody sitting at that table would all acknowledge that table to be real. And I think that to me is the extent of which we need to make that argument. I don't really think that there's anything else past that we really need to dive deep into. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong. If you disagree, let me know. I guess let's just hop back into it here.
Be like, look, come a brute fact, just something you assume without proof. Now, for some people, believing in the existence of your hands or the existence of the table isn't deep enough to be the brute fact, right? So you might think, well, maybe this table doesn't exist. I'm not sure, but how could I know? Well, I can see it with my eyes.
You touch it.
Do I believe that my sense data is accurate? Like, are my eyes giving me an accurate representation of reality? And a lot of people say, yeah, well, they don't just say yeah, they act like that, right? Like we all act as though our sense data gives us an accurate representation of reality. Whether we like it or not, we just believe it. The question is, are we justified in that belief? That's what the philosopher might ask. Is that a justified belief? And for some people, it's like, it doesn't matter because you're not going to stop believing that. So let that just be the basis of our epistemology, which is the study of knowledge, and we can build up from that. So philosophers will point out that any area of inquiry tends to start with an assumption, right? You might call it an axiom. And some people will say, something like my sense data being accurate is nowhere near certain enough to treat it as an axiom. Whereas others will say, sure it is.
But do you not think like those people are then I think it's good to ask questions about everything, but at some point, like, people just deep in too much shit.
That's true.
Like,
possible to be too skeptical.
Too skeptical. You said you didn't believe the table exists. At what point? No. At what point? No, let me talk.
Wind your neck in.
At what point are you going to start then really acting like how you believe and stop putting the microphone on the table? Because how could you put the microphone on the table because the table doesn't exist?
Yeah, but does the microphone even exist?
Well, why are we even here then? No, if that's how you feel.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking. Is I feel like I don't know this gentleman's name. I've not actually really watched too much of this podcast. I've never watched these guys before, Joe Weller and these other dudes. But I think that's my general take, is just like at one point, it becomes like we abstract these ideas so far, it becomes such an esoteric conversation. I don't think it's really worthwhile discussing, because I think at the end of the day, like you have to start building your foundation somewhere. And I think these different axioms that you can foundationally build on could get like further, more and more esoteric, to the point which I think Alex, and then also I think he spoke with Jordan Peterson, and they talk about like the foundational level of like your experience of the world can, infinitely be built on more and more ideas, and I don't know the term that philosophers use, but basically things that rely on other principles in order to exist. So, for example, in order to believe the table exists, you have to believe, I guess, like the components that make the table, like the legs and the top of the table exist, and then you have to believe that the materials that made the table exist, and then et cetera, and then all of these principles have to then coalesce into some ground, like some bedrock foundational understanding of something that is not reliant on something else. So Jordan Peterson makes the argument that could be God. Alex O'Connor has made the argument that it could be God, but also I actually forgot the other argument that he makes for it. But I think that at that point, it does just like the purpose of this conversation kind of gets a little bit too muddied, because you can really spend way too much time, I think, trying to create that groundwork, or excuse me, that framework. But yeah.
Just stand there. How can you stand there?
But don't have legs, mate.
Like, how can you stand there if you don't believe you have legs? You get onto this cycle of just like going too deep into everything. At what point do you have to just accept?
No, I mean, the argument is endless. But like, what I wasn't saying earlier is that I believe that, as in, like,
do you believe it?
No, and I agree with your point that we have to believe that there is something here. We exist. You are here. You are there. Otherwise, but do we believe that purely because it's just a more comfortable belief to believe that you are actually real? You are here. You are real.
I am, yes.
But there's no physical way.
That's just fun and games.
Yeah, you would say that though, wouldn't you?
I would say that. Yeah, I would.
Real.
It's just fun and games.
Really know is that I am here right now because I'm doing
How can you? No, you can't do that.
I'm doing it.
No, you can't do that.
I'm experiencing it.
Yes. Okay. Right. What has just happened in front of my very eyes is René Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy. I'm not even kidding. Right. So,
welcome to the Americas. 5 years on 180.
Descartes.
Have you ever heard the phrase "I think, therefore I am"?
Yes.
You come across this before?
Yes.
So this is a guy called Descartes, right? Who's one of these old paintings of an old man that you see in a university somewhere. And what he did was basically realized what you're thinking about right now, which is like, well, okay, like I could be wrong about so much, like I think that you see blue in the same way as I do, but maybe you don't. But wait, it's more fundamental, because What if the wall doesn't even exist? Can I prove it? Can I prove that my hands exist? Can I prove that I'm not in a simulation? And Descartes is just like freaking out. He's like, I don't know what to do. So in order to find out what he can know, he takes everything that it's possible to doubt and treats it as if it's false and sees what's left over. Because importantly, there's a difference between saying, I think the table doesn't exist, and saying, I'm not convinced that the table exists. I don't know. I don't think I have good reason to think it does exist. That doesn't mean you proactively believe it definitely doesn't exist. So, like, Joe, if you were saying, like, I'm not sure if I can justify my belief in the table, and you say, well, do you really believe that the table doesn't exist? It's like, no, you might not. You might not be saying the table doesn't exist. You might just be saying, I've got no reason to think it does. So Descartes takes all of the stuff that you can doubt, the existence of the table, the existence of my hands, the fact that I could be a brain in a vat, all of this and treats all of it as false. What's left over? What is the one thing that it is impossible to doubt? It's like not on a practical level.
My brain.
Yes, or more precisely, like could you...
My thoughts.
Yes.
My consciousness.
Exactly, because you could imagine that like the brain is actually an illusion and you can conceptually separate the thoughts you're having from the physical brain, right? But like, just imagine yourself not existing. It's not possible because as soon as you're doing the imagining is a kind of thinking. So when Descartes is doubting everything, he realizes that doubt is a kind of thought, right? When you doubt something, you're thinking. So doubt is a kind of thought. But in order to think, there has to be something doing the thinking. And so to even doubt my own existence requires my existence. So he says, I think, therefore I am. As long as I'm thinking, I know that there is something that exists. Now, crucially, this does not mean that Descartes, with his hair and his hands in his chair, exists. He can't know that. All he knows is there is some kind of thinking being that exists. And that's where he starts. Like, of all of the skepticism, what I can know is that I, in some form, exist, which is what you said a second ago, Joe, right? You were like, I know that I'm here because I'm thinking, like I'm thinking about stuff, so I know that I'm here. That's what Descartes realized. But you could be, the stuff you're thinking about could be wrong. Like, you might not actually have this body, you might not be in this room, you might be in a vat somewhere, but there is some kind of version of you that exists. And that's where he starts. And from that, he builds up his epistemological framework,
So how would I go about articulating and proving that this table exists?
Well, a lot of people say you can't do it. For Descartes, the way he did it was to say, okay, so I know that I exist, but maybe my sense data is all inaccurate, right? Maybe I'm sort of being deceived. So his version of the simulation hypothesis was to imagine an evil demon, Descartes' evil demon. He was like, imagine there was this evil creature that was giving me all this false information, was prodding my brain, giving me false sensory data, and it was all an illusion. How could I know that's not the case? And Descartes' only way to do this, and this is controversial, is Descartes first proved the existence of God. After proving the existence of God, he decided that those intuitions that you believe most like undeniably, things like maths, 2 + 2 is 4, stuff like that, is not the kind of thing that if a good God existed, he would allow you to be deceived about. Like, if a good God exists, he wouldn't allow everyone to be deceived all the time. Therefore, we're not being deceived. Therefore, we can know that 2 + 2 is 4. And we can start, like, knowing true things about the universe. The controversial thing for Descartes, then, is that he first had to prove the existence of God. And a lot of people think that his proof, doesn't work. Maybe it does. But, as you rightly point out, you can interestingly find out that you can know you exist.
So I think right there is what I was talking about earlier, where it's like, okay, so I think he said Descartes had to prove, in order to stop freaking out, was that he proved that God exists, and then he was able to, make some conclusions that if a good God exists, then, he wouldn't allow people to be deceived by things like maths. And I guess I'm kind of interested in why it had to come to that conclusion. Not saying the God portion. I think just the hop, skip, and a jump for someone that I guess I can wind it back like this. When you are so learned in a subject, I think that there's oftentimes it makes sense to go into a very esoteric, very deep way to think about it, to build up your foundation, to be able to rationalize every other decision that in the framework of which you want to create your existence and your experience of the universe, right? I think the trouble that maybe I have, and maybe this is what he was just saying Descartes discovered or, experienced for himself was, why do we have to go through all of that mental gymnastics of proving, like exactly, that a table exists, like a table is there, we're all experiencing it, but does it really exist? Why do we have to go through all those mental gymnastics? But at the same time, I don't think a philosopher would really argue scientific theory or like the scientific process very much, of testing a hypothesis, and if it's tested enough times, it eventually becomes a law. And I just, maybe that's what he's saying, Descartes saying, like he wouldn't, like a good God would not allow people to be deceived by things such as maths, in which case, the concept of scientific laws doesn't fit into this framework of like, does a table exist, or does the table they're sitting at exist? But I don't know if that's true, because like if you can prove, if what Descartes is saying regarding the maths is true, or you want to abide by that principle, good God would not let people get deceived by, like, for things such as maths, like 2 + 2 is always 4. Then at the same time, can't we do some tests on this table? If I experience that table to be real, everybody, the 9 other viewers watching this experience the table to be real, the 4 people sitting at that table to be experience that table and it's real. The cups, the microphones, the phones, the iPad, everything that exists in frame, acknowledge the camera that's recording this video experiences that table to be real. Is the table not real? Especially if what Descartes is saying is true. Maybe I stopped the video too early, but let's see here. See what he says.
But then how do you build upon that? Well, how do I know that this table exists? And a lot of people say you just don't know.
I want to take you back to that part about God.
Well, see, that's where, okay, if that's the case, I feel like maybe I'm missing something, but I just would have to disagree then. If we can prove if what Descartes is saying is true, and you accept that as your framework, then you also, I would think, have to accept the fact that you can prove the table exists. If you believe in scientific method, then you surely have to believe in that you can do enough testing to make rational assumptions that this table does in fact exist. But
because I think that's kind of where you were pushing us down when you spoke about where do we come from. Because obviously you have, I know you said you're agnostic, but you're atheist views.
Hitting your goals has nothing to do with discipline. The real culprit is friction, and it slowly erodes your progress. Unlike what most people believe, it isn't.
The origin of man, is that just a series of events, or have we been placed here? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the only answer that certainly I can give is that I don't know. I have ideas, and we can explore like different theories that people have, but obviously I don't have the answer. Like not with the confidence that I could tell you I've got the key. Because if I did, I'd probably be a lot more famous if I actually knew the answer to why we're here. But people have all kinds of ideas. You said man, the origin of man. There are 2 things that we could separate out. There's the origin of mankind, of humans. There's also the origin of the universe itself. Because conceivably there could have been a universe with no people in it. And that still would have been a great mystery. Why does that universe exist? But we've got this added mystery that within this universe of stuff like tables and glasses and plants over there, we have this consciousness. There's something that it's like to be you. You have a first-person experience of the world. That's really weird. Why does that exist? And how does it exist? So along the way, there are all of these mysteries. And the first one is, how does the thing get going in the first place? Why is there this origin of the universe, this Big Bang? But okay, why? There are a few ways to answer this question. One is to say that at the Big Bang, the moment of the Big Bang or just before the Big Bang, everything is condensed into something so small. It's called a singularity. It's the same thing you get at the middle of a black hole. It's like this unbelievably, almost infinitely dense set of matter. And like everything is so crunched up that basically the laws of physics just stop working. So our conceptions of time, of causation, of all of this kind of stuff just might just not apply. So there's one sense in which it might just be impenetrable to us. We might just never be able to properly investigate it. But other people say, look, the universe began to exist, and anything which begins to exist has a cause. Things don't just begin to exist for no reason. Right? You're not worried that while you're here at home in your kitchen, a horse has just popped into existence and is now destroying your furniture, right? You're not worried about. Why are you not worried about that?
Doesn't happen.
Because things like that don't. But why not? Like, how do you know that something like that couldn't just happen for no reason?
I just know.
You just know. Like, you, at the very least, you assume this principle that things don't just begin to exist without some kind of cause. Okay, well, the universe began to exist, so scientists tell us. Therefore, it had some kind of cause. So the universe must have a cause, right? That's where that argument leads. Okay, says like the atheist or the skeptic. Well, what kind of cause are you talking about? That could be anything. Could be a law of physics. Could be anything. Maybe there are a few things we can know about this cause. If it exists outside of the universe, it has to be spaceless, so it's immaterial. It has to be timeless. It exists outside of time. It also has to have some kind of causal power. So we've got this entity which is immaterial, which is outside of time, and which has some kind of causal power.
Could be called a god.
Looking a little bit suspicious, right? And here's the thing that might be really interesting, right? Suppose you've got this cause, and we know that whatever caused the universe has the power to bring about the universe, right? We know that it has, let's say, the causal efficacy to bring about the effect, right? It has the relevant causal power. If A causes B, right, and A exists timelessly, then B should also be timeless, right? Because if A has the causal ability to bring about B, then if A is timeless, B should also be timeless, because A brings about B. But we've got a timeless A, but a B which has a certain set time, right? The universe began to exist at a point in time. So in other words, you've got a timeless creator and a timed creation. How does that work? It means that the cause in its infinite, timeless state must sort of do something, at some point. Because if it was just this impersonal force that brought about universes, then if it existed timelessly, the universe should exist timelessly as well. But if you've got a timeless being who at some point, creates something at a point in time, it must, do something. So now you've got a spaceless, timeless creator of the universe that, does stuff. It's not just this abstract force or something. It somehow changes. Maybe it has a will, or maybe it has some kind of nature that moves around. And as you say, it's starting to look a lot like God. So some people look at the beginning of the universe and say the only explanation for this is God. And I want to clarify that a lot of people think that what religious people do is they come along and they say the God of the gaps. You might have heard that phrase, where they say, you just say that when science can't explain something, you just say God did it. But science is constantly explaining things, and one day we won't need your God anymore. An argument like this doesn't say, we don't know what caused the universe, therefore it must be God. An argument like this says, there are things we do know about the universe. We know that it was the beginning of time and space. We know that...
I also feel to the same point, I guess I think you hear about God of the gap. I've never actually heard the term. But I think that's probably the thing that, at least in the West, you experience the most with people that are religious, going into conversations with people who aren't exactly religious, is, the things that we can't explain. Okay, yeah, God did it. And I think that there is a lot of credence to that, but I think at the same time, it's okay, well, your premise I think it's kind of like the bell curve meme, where it's people on the left side of the bell curve, it's God did it, and then the people on the right side of the curve, it's God did it, and then in the center, it's this idea that oh no, it's only possible through science. I don't necessarily think that I'm not saying you're a midwit if you're an atheist by any means. I think that just this, my current understanding of things would have the bell curve meme kind of sit like that. Reason is, and stay with me on this. And if you have a different opinion, please chime in. I want to know. I think God of the Gaps is very fundamentally flawed, because it's like, as soon as we discover something new, funny to see a lot of, I had I think 14 viewers and it dropped to 7 after saying that. Oh, Dave, gotta go. Yeah, dude. All right, catch you, Dave. Let's hang out soon. I'll catch you later, brother. Appreciate you helping me out, set up the stream. Talk to you soon, man. Yeah, anyways, I think the problem with the God of the Gap is that as soon as science explains something, then that becomes like an inherently flawed argument for the people that believe in some sort of God or creator or creators, depending on whatever you believe. And then it becomes like this whole, I guess, race back and forth between theists and atheists, where it's like a lazy theist will describe things that they don't understand as, oh, it was probably God, even though it's just like, we haven't figured out the science yet. And then you go back and are like, oh, actually, this is why this happened. I think that happened with heliocentrism versus geocentrism. And geocentrism was this idea that everything, like the sun revolved, or what is it? Yeah, the sun revolves around the earth. It is funny. I saw like a different clip from Alex O'Connor discussing why he now believes in geocentrism as kind of like a tongue-in-cheek thing, because space is relative. Like our existence within space is relative. So by some account, you know, the Earth could be the center of everything, largely due to the fact that we are the only ones that experience the sun. We don't know of any creatures that exist outside of our planet. Some clip, you should watch it. But at the same time, it's, while also in one hand saying that I think that there's a lot of flaws in just the God in the Gap argument, I also do think that there are like very learned like theologians that are actually physicists and mathematicians and scientists that eventually go on to being you know, priests, pastors, whatever. The father of the idea of the Big Bang was a Catholic priest. I believe, was it Copernicus that did heliocentrism, that discovered that we revolve around the sun? He was also a Christian of some sort. So I think that it's not like, that's why I think it's kind of like a bell curve meme, because you can be very lazy and not explain and not really know what you're talking about and just assume that God did it. Or there's like, on the other hand, very learned scholars or people with very strong faith that also believe that God did it. But anyways, we'll let Alex and gang continue here.
We know that it had a beginning, we know that it must have a cause, and we just explored what properties that cause must have. And then I didn't say, you said that looks a bit like God. So it's a ground-up argument for the existence of something which people might call God. So that's one answer to your question.
Oh my god! I just won it!
Or not, it's up to you, but some kind of timeless, spaceless, immaterial creator of the universe brought the universe about. Another answer to your question, why did the universe begin to exist, is that it just did for no reason. It just happened, right? Seems pretty unconvincing, a little bit weird, but weird stuff happens when you're looking at like a singularity, right? Like if the universe came from nothing, here's something kind of funny. If there were true nothingness, there wouldn't be the constraining axiom that something can't come from nothing. Right? You've got this rule, something can't come from nothing. That's a rule. But if there's nothing, that rule doesn't exist. So something can come from nothing. So universe, out of nowhere. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So look, it gets a bit sort of silly, but the classical answer and the most popular answer throughout human history to your question is that there's some kind of creative agent who brought the universe about.
Right, rather than the word, then God, put that aside, do you think there's some sort of creator?
Well,
do you think that's a conscious thing?
To be clear,
it's decided.
I don't know.
You don't.
I don't know if this is the case. I think it's an interesting argument, and it's plausible. But yeah, I think that I don't know about consciousness, because consciousness is quite a complex and difficult thing to define. It's got lots of facets. But certainly the idea that it has some kind of will is not a far stretch, given that you've got a finite effect from an infinite cause. If you've got an infinite cause but a finite effect, then that infinite cause must at some point do something, which seems to align well, or might be explained well by the existence of a will.
So what about then, in terms of like just us as individuals, our own consciousness, us as beings, do you think that's just a random, we're born with this personality and that's it, and then we die and then we're gone? Or some people may believe that we are our consciousness and we decide that we want to come into this being and live this life for some sort of reason, motive. What are your thoughts on that? Consciousness, why we come in, why we are who we are, and how that comes about?
Yeah, well, there's a few things to pull apart there, which is like, firstly, is consciousness something different from just like your brain, like your material brain? Because you had this idea that maybe before we're born, we sort of exist consciously and make a decision to come into this world, which, by the way, is what Mormons believe. They believe that every person existed pre their birth, and they make a decision, like they say, like, do you want this to happen? And they sort of consent to like coming into this body, and then they forget about that, prenatal existence. Right. Pretty wacky, right? But before you get to the question of what was this soul doing before the physical body, the first thing you need to ask is it separable? Because if the mind or the consciousness is the same thing as the physical brain, that means that when the brain exists, you have consciousness, and when there's no brain, there's no consciousness. So when you die, if I blow up your head or something, it's gone, it's over. And before you existed, there was no consciousness of you until the brain began to exist.
That's not the case, though, is it?
What do you mean?
If you're asleep...
Yep.
No, it's true. If you're asleep or you're in a coma, you still have your brain, but you're unconscious.
That's true. So it may be that, well, when you're in a dream, a lot of the time when you're dreaming, you are unconscious. That's true. But it may be that in order to have consciousness, you need a brain. Like the brain does consciousness, but the brain doesn't always have to do consciousness. It's a bit like this light that's probably off screen, right? You've got a light up there, and you can turn off the light, and you can turn it on again, and I could say, like, there's no way that this glow is just a material object, like this bulb or whatever. That makes no sense. But there are some people who think, no, it is literally just the bulb. And the fact that you sometimes can turn it off and turn it on again doesn't mean that the light is anything more than the bulb. It just means that sometimes it switches off. So the brain produces consciousness somehow, but sometimes, it switches off when you're under anesthetic or when you're sleeping or whatever. It can switch off. But it is just the same thing as the brain, or like the brain is crucial to bring about consciousness. Other people think that consciousness is this like totally separate thing that exists immaterially, that somehow the brain like connects to. Like imagine a radio like signal, and there's a metal antenna, and the antenna, you need the antenna to get the picture on the screen. But the antenna isn't producing the picture on the screen. It's like honing into these ways. And some people think of the brain a little bit like that. You need the brain to have the conscious experience, but the brain is actually just like an antenna for this immaterial, weird thing which we call consciousness. Okay, so you've got these two views. Consciousness is material. It's made of the same stuff as the table. It's just the same thing as the brain. And consciousness is this weird, immaterial thing which exists separately from the brain. Both of those views have really interesting problems, right? If you think that consciousness is separate from the brain, you think it's its own thing. So there are people who are called dualists, as in dual, two. You have sort of two natures to you, a physical nature and a spiritual nature. 75% of Americans are dualists. Just intuitively, they think that they have a soul, they have a mind that's separate from their material body. The question then is like, why is it that this immaterial brain, this consciousness, interacts with my physical brain? Like, why is it that if I prod my brain, it affects my mind? And I can't change my mind without something happening to my brain. And it seems like brains don't crop up without minds, and minds don't crop up without brains. That's a little bit weird. And it's not like, it's a bit of a mystery. If the mind is immaterial, if consciousness is immaterial, it has no spatial location. because space is physical, right? So if it's non-physical, why does my consciousness connect to this brain and not that brain?
Yeah.
Like, why? It's called the interaction problem. How do you get an interaction between a physical thing and a non-physical thing? Those are completely different entities. It's like getting an interaction between the number 362 and a banana. Like, they're different. A number is an abstract thing that exists in your imagination. A banana is a physical. They literally, how would they interact? That doesn't even make any sense. If the mind is immaterial and abstract and the brain is physical, how do they interact? So that's the problem for the dualist. What is that connection?
Yeah. But is there a sense of like you have to accept that you can't figure everything out? There are certain things that like, oh, that doesn't make sense, but doesn't mean it's not happening.
Absolutely, but that's why when you ask questions like, where does consciousness come from, or how did the universe begin to exist, a lot of the time the best answer is just like, I have no idea, but let's explore some ideas and see what convinces you. Because what will happen, right, is we'll have a conversation, and maybe, I don't know, maybe we're getting a bit too into it, maybe it's getting a bit weird, and some of the words that we're using, or we're losing people, like, who knows? But if we have a productive conversation, you might come away thinking, you know what, dude, like, I definitely, like, the mind is immaterial, and somebody else might say, no, it's connected to the brain. All you're doing with these conversations is working out what you believe.
You know the question you just asked then about it doesn't matter? Isn't that my entire argument about the table, though?
And it's not saying it's like just disregarding it and going, no, I'm going to just ignore that because life would be more easier and straightforward to not comprehend those ideas.
You just said it doesn't matter.
No,
That's what I'm saying about the table.
I'm saying in the sense of like, no, if you can't figure something out, doesn't mean that it's not happening. That's what I said. As in like, just because you can't figure out how the connection between like your soul and your brain, how can that operate? How are they separate? The interaction problem. That doesn't mean it's not happening.
Yeah.
Just because you can't figure it out. Do you get me?
I spoke to a philosopher called Richard Swinburne, who
he's trying.
He's a.
I think one of the things that this raises for me is the idea, if you were to, if you believe in, everyone has a soul or a consciousness, I wonder for the group of people that are atheist or agnostic, if we can build up some sort of belief system around the fact that, like, let's just set the premise being that you're an atheist or an agnostic, so you either absolutely believe that, there is no God or no higher power, or you just don't know. Let's just start there. But you do believe in the idea of consciousness. Like, you have, you experience the world in a particular way that is very unique to yourself, and nobody experiences the world exactly like you do. I don't know if they're saying it here or if Alex is saying it here, but I wonder if you could build up a framework such that essentially the way that consciousness exists in some sort of regard is the same way we all experience the same thing. So let's just say, in the case of this video, we're all watching the same video, presumably. Obviously, there was arguments before this where, Alex says that basically we can't really be too sure. Like, everybody could be experiencing this differently. I'm watching a guy that is an agnostic, discuss with three other British guys about faith and all this kind of other stuff. You guys might think it's a video about like Blue's Clues or like Fortnite or something, which I wouldn't really know unless you were to tell me that you did and you were telling the truth. But I think that's again a separate point. Assuming that we're all watching the same video, can we construct a framework that we all experience the same thing? The reason why we have a different response or a consciousness, the way that we believe the things that we believe, are based on some of like the prime factors of like our evolution. So let's say like fear, joy, excitement. I don't know what these other like the other emotions, but I guess just general emotions that we. I think a theist would say that we have as like an evolutionary skill to help us adapt and thrive, to further our species. Could we then say that consciousness is a secondary or like comes from the idea that we are experiencing things in such a way that based on like physical things. So like, let's just say you're blind in one eye, or like you have blurry vision. So we are generally experiencing the same thing, but you're experiencing things slightly differently, just due to the fact that you see, you know, you need glasses to see, but let's just say you don't have glasses. But let's just say ceteris paribus, we all have like the same physical, like, you know, physically we're all the same. Then it comes down to the way that we experience these emotions. I think that would be how, if I wanted to make an argument for how we can construct the idea of consciousness from like an atheist or like a secular point of view, is it's the response that each one of us receives in our brains for different emotional weights that we put into a given situation. I can elaborate on what I mean by that. The way that I thought about this was through the lens of like a machine learning model, and specifically like a neural network. And we're building this neural network, and it's got different weights for each of these different model parameters. All right. So we're going through the process of tuning these model parameters, but at the same time, these weights are randomized at the start. Okay. So we might be building a model off of the same original, you know, source code, but the weights are randomized differently for each person. So I guess in theory, what I'm trying to say is the weights are on these different model parameters, being like fear, joy, hunger, pleasure, all these different things. And the way that those are tuned are what create our conscious response. That's at least the way that I think I would make an argument as a atheist. That kind of makes sense to me, from the regard of like, you know, the reason why you experience things, the reason why you feel certain ways about things, it's because of the way that you were raised, the way, you know, the interactions that you had ever since you were a kid up until your adult life, and that has shaped the weights and biases that you have for a given emotion, all the different emotions being the parameters that we're tuning. So that's how I think I would make that argument. But anyways, we'll get back to it.
He's a dualist, right? And so he believes that there is a mind and a body, and they interact. And I said to him, like, but how do they interact then? And his answer was like, well, they just do. I don't know how they do, but we just know that they do. Because I've got arguments to believe that the mind is immaterial, but I've also got a brain. I don't know how that interacts, but like I know that it does, you know? And so if I'm understanding you correctly, the fact that it's a mystery, this interaction problem, isn't necessarily a critique of dualism. Because you could say, well, the interaction, how do they interact? And one way of looking at that is to go, yeah, good point, dualism must be false. And another way is to say, yeah, good point, but we know it does happen, but I don't know why, you know? The one interesting thing is that you might have two consciousnesses inside of you.
Is this the left and the right?
Yeah.
From the existential.
Yeah. I talked about it in that video too.
Yeah.
This is a mind bender. It will blow both of your minds. I mean, like.
What about mine?
Both of your internal minds.
You're already there, mate.
You haven't got one.
Each of you have two. I mean, it'll blow both of your minds,
My left side and my right
both
side.
of your minds. Yeah. So you know that the brain is split into two hemispheres,
yes.
right? If you've seen a brain, it looks like it's got two bits, and you'll probably have heard people talk about right brain and left brain, right? And there's a lot of pseudoscience in that, but there are some things that we know are true. The left hemisphere of your brain broadly controls the right side of your body. And the right hemisphere broadly controls the left side of the body. So the left visual field, the left arm, right hemisphere, right? There are some really interesting people who have undergone a particular operation which has severed the connective tissue between the right and the left hemisphere.
I took two things that I love, dancing and
used to happen as a treatments for severe cases of epilepsy. Especially, I don't think they do it anymore, but the connective tissue between the two hemispheres is called the corpus callosum, connects them. And so they undergo a corpus callosotomy, where they chop it in half. And people who had really, really bad epilepsy, having all kinds of seizures, one way to try to reduce it was to sever this brain connection so that there was less communication, right? And if you met such a person, you wouldn't know, because they would be talking to you as I'm talking to you now. You wouldn't notice that anything has changed, except under some very specific circumstances. So experimenters have done experiments. People have done experiments on so-called split brain patients, people who've had that split done. And consensually, I should say, they signed up for the studies, and they found some really interesting things. So, for example, if you put up some barriers and stuff, you could show information just to somebody's left visual field. So they don't see it with this side, they only see it with this side, right? And so they did that. Now remember, the right hemisphere sees out of the left, and the left hemisphere sees out of the right. But also, they seem to govern different things. Like, speech and communication seems to be related to the left hemisphere, not the right hemisphere. So all the words that I'm saying to you right now are sort of being governed by the left hemisphere. So here's something interesting that they've done. They showed somebody's left visual field, so just their right hemisphere, a picture. But they've only shown it to the right hemisphere of the brain, so they show it through their left visual field. And say it's a picture of an apple. And then they say to them, what can you see? What are you looking at? And they'll go, I have no idea. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see anything. And then they give them a piece of paper and a pen and ask them to draw something, and they draw an apple. Because the part of their brain which deals with
Going to take a second to respond to you, Ia Jensen. No, I'm not. I like watching Alex O'Connor, and I'm kind of just yapping about it. Originally, I was going to do some coding while I was kind of taking time to give my personal take on what he's saying. So if you just joined, you might have missed the stuff that I was saying earlier. But no, I'm not just freeloading off of other people's content. But I do appreciate you contributing to the conversation. No, I'm just kind of waiting for something to chime in on. I've been doing that periodically throughout this entire live stream. Yeah, I mean, that's all there is to it. I was going to do more work while I was doing this, but I got wrapped up in watching the video instead of trying to multitask. I just focused on this, and yeah, here we are. But yeah, I mean, since you're so curious about, what I'm doing with, I guess you assumed, and that's fine. I know I wasn't talking. I have no idea when you jumped into the conversation or jumped into watching this live, but if you have anything that you want to share, please, feel free to share it. I really would love for more people to contribute to the conversation. And even though you were kind of snobby about it, I'm still interested in knowing what your perspective is on this conversation, or if you've already seen this video before. But yeah, anyways, I'm gonna get back to it. But I hope that answers your question.
Like action and behavior and creative output has seen the apple, but the part of the brain that deals with language and communication hasn't seen the apple. Isn't that bloody weird, right? So it seems like the two hemispheres are doing different things. People who have damage to the left hemisphere will sometimes find that their right hand starts acting sort of of its own accord. And I should make sure I get this the right way around. Yeah, if you've got damage to the left hemisphere, then your right hand will start making grabbing motions sometimes. It might just grab the side of the table, and I sort of didn't control that. Whereas if the right hemisphere is damaged, there have been reported cases of people's left hands going funny, but instead of grabbing things, they do feeling motions. They'll feel things, which you got to be careful with.
Yeah.
But that because of the fact that in either case, right, the damage to the hemisphere makes your arms act funny, but they're doing different things. The left brain is numbers and sort of putting things organizationally into compartments and boxes, so it likes to grab. The right hemisphere is the artistic one. It's where creativity comes from, so it feels, right? I'll give you one more example.
Joe Nicole, that's fair enough. When I joined, I wasn't really paying attention. I thought this podcast was live. Yeah, no. This happened, I think, like a week ago, and I've been trying to make time to watch this because Alex O'Connor. Not sure if anybody in the chat or I guess watching has seen Alex O'Connor's videos before. He's really cool. He has a degree in philosophy and also, I believe, theology from Cambridge. And he has really cool conversations with both theists and atheists. He used to do more debate style stuff, but now it's purely just conversations, which honestly I really enjoy. But yeah, anyways. Oh, cool, nice. Yeah, I like Alex a lot too. I really think that he gives a very fair take on both sides, which I feel like is very refreshing in these kinds of conversations, because I feel like there is already a lot of like debate channels on whether or not you're a theist or an atheist. And I like that he is just very able to calmly explain and diagnose, or at least has a very open perspective to I guess learn something new and maybe I guess switch sides or whatever. Did I say Oxford? Or I said Cambridge, didn't I? Yeah. Well, Joe Nicole, I'm sorry that this isn't the live video. I've been wanting to watch this and then kind of give my take because I'm always interested in what he has to say. Yeah, I'm sorry if the time that you were here, it wasn't exactly exciting. I'm sorry that you felt like you needed to report it. But I hope you have a good day. And I am working on making content more interesting. This is actually the first time I've done a video like this. It's usually me just yapping to the camera with a couple other followers of mine. So I appreciate, the grace giving me time to kind of figure this out. But I do a lot of coding and business and tech stuff, but I'm really interested in philosophy and faith stuff. So, oh, well, thanks, Joe Nicole. Yeah, I appreciate that. I just saw Ia Jensen kind of seemed to really not like the fact that I was just watching the video, which I understand. I think that I think to Ia's point, I think that there are a lot of, at least I don't see it on YouTube as much, but I do see like on TikTok, there's a lot of people that just leech off of other people's content and I'm not going to yell about this too long because I don't want to get too distracted from this cool conversation that they're having. But I do see a lot of people, just slap their face on something, say nothing, and then just get like hundreds of thousands of clicks and whatever. And I agree that's annoying, whatever, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect my life. So whatever. I do get wanting to make sure, I agree, if we're going to watch a video, it should be adding value outside of the conversation they're having, because I like to support Alex. I think he's awesome. I don't know Joe Weller or the other guys. The reason why I found this video in the first place is because I like Alex O'Connor. But yeah, I just want to let you know, even though I disagree with your opinion, I understand where you're coming from. Benny, thanks for the correction. Oxford, Cambridge, they're both incredible schools. So but yeah, you're right. He's Oxford. Joe Nicole, he is respectful. He's dope. And thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it. I'm going to get back to the video now.
This is bloody amazing, right? So they would show an instruction to just the right visual field. Bear in mind they're in an experiment, so they're told, follow the instructions of the experimenter. So these split brain patients are shown just to their right hemisphere an instruction which says, get up and walk over to that.
All right. I know I said I was just going to start the video, but thanks, Panaroid. I appreciate that. That's nice of you. But at the same time, I really appreciate that because I am not trying to leech off of content, but I do, that did make me smile. And yeah, everybody deserves some grace because she turned, I assumed that Ia, I don't know if you're, I'm just gonna say they tuned in to a time in the video that I wasn't really saying much because he was talking about left and right, like hemispheres of your brain. I don't have too much to say about that. Quite frankly, I think that the podcast, I was looking at the different sections it breaks up into. It seems like the later half is when they start to talk a little bit more about God and psychedelics and all that stuff. But this is kind of like the framework that they build upon. I just don't really have too much of an input outside of like the things here and there that are more philosophical. Like earlier, he was talking about Descartes. When he's talking about the brain hemisphere stuff, it's kind of like, that's just something that I have to accept axiomatically because I don't have too much of an understanding about it. But anyways, thanks again, Panorite, appreciate you. And we'll get back to it.
To that side of the room. And they see it, and they get up, and they walk over to the other side of the room. And then the experimenter says to them, why'd you just get up and walk to the other side of the room? And guess what they say?
Hello?
You would think, like after everything I've just said, it would be amazing enough, right, if they just said, I don't know. I don't know why I walked over to the room. But it's not even that they do that. They come up with an explanation. Like this happens all
as
the
in
time.
they just fake something?
This is the weird thing. They're not faking it. They say something like, I was thirsty, so I was going to get some water. Or, I was uncomfortable, so I was stretching my legs. And they're not lying. They're not just inventing it, and they're not being awkward. Their brain has literally just invented a reason retrospectively that they now believe.
Like to make it make sense in your own brain.
Exactly. So based on this, some scientists have called the left hemisphere the interpreter. And it's the right brain that like just sort of does stuff. It feels its way through the world, and it's the left brain's job to interpret why it's doing that. And that's why it's connected to like language, so you can explain yourself and you can think in terms of like reason and argument. But it seems to suggest that the two brains are sort of doing different things, right? And so this is the case in split brain patients, right? If you show that information, if you say go over there to the right hemisphere, they'll walk over and then they'll have a completely disconnected reason as to why they did that. You can't reproduce that experiment in a normally functioning human brain because you can't separate the visual fields like that. But it doesn't mean that the same thing isn't going on. So it's possible that most of what we do.
Wait, Joe Nicole, elaborate on what you're whatting about. The first thing that, at least I don't know if we're thinking about the same thing here telepathically through the live stream, but I was thinking it is kind of interesting. I don't know what they call it here, but just the like human inclination to gap fill in order to explain the world around them for things that they don't understand. Oh yeah, okay, we are thinking about the same thing. Yes, we have this tendency, and I think that this is like it's tough. I think that this is where psychology, philosophy meets faith a little bit more, because in my head, I kind of go from the idea of gap filling in the brain. Yeah, okay. So same. Didn't really. I don't know too much about this either, so this is new to me. But the one thing he said just about like the gap filling part, I think it's like one of the stronger cases for atheism, just because it's like, okay, like because we don't understand the world, we fill the gaps with some sort of theology, which is where the idea, I don't know if you were here earlier, about the whole God of the gaps concept, which I guess is like this the more lazy theologian's way of explaining the world around them, which is more just like, I don't understand it, so therefore it must be God. I've already said of what I think about, like, there are, obviously very incredibly smart theologians. One of them was a Catholic priest that discovered the Big Bang. Yeah, the God of the gaps argument. Exactly. So I think that this is like, the same idea. Yeah. But on the other hand, I think that like the theist then has to just axiomatically believe, in which I think that Alex does, and which is why he doesn't call himself a strict atheist and why he calls himself more of a agnostic. is because he doesn't really know. So he's not saying like I don't believe that God exists, but he is saying that I just don't know, which I think is like a much more understandable take to assume, because I think a theist, again, maybe just because I've never actually just been a straight up atheist, but I have, at my current understanding of what atheism is fundamentally, it feels like there is like a pretty big connection between an atheist and a lazy theologian with regards to just explaining things away as something either exists or doesn't exist. Because I think that an atheist would have more ground to stand on. Specifically, I'm breaking up the idea of an atheist and an agnostic. Agnostic makes 100% sense to me. Atheism, it's like we just don't have the science to prove that these things don't exactly exist. Like there's no way that we can fully understand whether or not God does or does not exist. So I think being an atheist is why I kind of equate them to a lazy theologian. Anyways, we can get back to it. I just want to catch up on some of these comments real quick. So Joe Nicole, you and I are kind of on the same page. NBA Amir, welcome, brother. What are you saying? Some theists really think it's a checkmate to say that they have an explanation and it's God, and atheists don't. So I think that I did actually cover what you were just talking about, because I definitely understand where you're coming from. But that's why I think that, not Joe Weller, I just see his name in the top left-hand corner. Alex O'Connor, why I think his position as an agnostic to me makes a little bit more sense. Being an atheist is not equivalent to making a claim that God does not exist. Okay, well, see, that's understandable. That's why I have a fundamental misunderstanding of what atheism is. But I kind of thought that was what atheism was, and agnostic is more of like, I just don't know. So I thought atheism is more of a hardline stance, where agnosticism is more of like sitting on the fence. Oh, Joe Nicole, thank you for giving me your perspective. I'm an atheist, and my official opinion about existence is that I do not know, but it makes more sense to me that there is no God, which is why I call myself an atheist, but I don't assert no God. Oh, okay. Okay, so so I understand Joe Nicole's position, NBA Amir. If you want me to call you something else, let me know. It feels weird calling you NBA, but I will if that's what you like being called. So on Joe Nicole's point, that is how I see. I feel like Joe Nicole, you probably agree with Alex then. I would assume, and I guess I don't want to assume too much, but that's at least what my understanding was of like the difference between an atheist and an agnostic is like there's like the assertion that you said at the end there. So since this is semantics, so since you being an atheist, you have a better understanding of what an atheism is. I have the incorrect assumption that the reason why Alex describes himself as an agnostic is because he just does not know. He just believes that there is more likely than not the case that God does not exist, which is why he calls himself an agnostic. But atheism alone is the rejection of the notion that God exists. From there, atheists differ widely on their views. Some claim there's no God, some agnostic, some are agnostic. Okay, so okay, awesome, Amir. Awesome. But now I know you are doxxed because I know you like basketball. I don't know your team, but there we go. So then based on your claim, Amir, it sounds like you're saying, and obviously Joe Nicole, hop in on this because I don't know if Amir is atheist or agnostic or what Amir believes, but since I know you're an atheist, would you agree that based on what Amir is saying, sounds like agnosticism is a subsect of the branch of atheism, which to me it's more of a spectrum, at least my original understanding before talking with you both. The understanding being that there's like, let's start from, I don't know, this is mirrored, so this is kind of weird. So I guess on your side of the screen, it's the right side. It's my right hand that I'm moving now. But on the left side of your screen, we have from increasing faith in some sort of God. I would assume it was like atheism here, and then like this is the center. Then you have agnosticism here, which is just the center, and then you have, theists. Non-stamp collector thing. No, okay, cool. This is something new. I have not heard of the non-stamp collector thing. I have watched a lot of Alex's videos, but I don't think I've heard him talk about that. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say on this. Okay, yeah. So I guess interestingly enough, I think Alex O'Connor also said he went to Catholic school, or he was raised Catholic. Didn't have that personal connection with God, seeks it out, which is in part why he did his degree in theology. But yeah, I mean, please let me know what someone who doesn't collect stamps isn't a non-stamp collector. They just don't collect stamps. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So then, so you and I are just, we're having a semantic, like the difference between what I call an agnostic and what you say is an atheist, I think boils down to semantics, is what it sounds like. Because my like back of the envelope, napkin, one sentence explainer of what agnosticism is they don't believe in God, but they don't not believe in God because they just don't know. Yeah. Okay, we're on the same page. Yes. So by that definition, earlier you said you're an atheist, but would you call yourself an agnostic then? Because it's just more of like based on what we understand, I don't know. Not I know this to be the case. That's the only that's if I like the non-stamp collector thing. I think that's a very easy way to put it. You run into that a lot. Yeah. I think that is like it's tough to, I think, really say for sure. I think the people that are agnostics, when I use the term agnostic, some of my Christian friends think that I'm on the fence, but I'm not really on the fence. Oh, okay. So it's almost like not a defense mechanism, but like, I understand what you mean, and because I'll do that in other conversations with friends or like, people on the street where it's like, oh, like when you're walking around the street downtown somewhere and like you've got those people holding up the signs for like PETA or like some other sort of organization, and they're trying to talk to you, and you're like, do you have 1 minute to save the kids? And you're just like, no, or something like that. Similar concepts like, oh, do you believe in, let's just use PETA for an example, purely for example purposes. Oh, do you want to help save the animals? And it's like, no, I eat cheeseburgers. I like cheeseburgers. And it's like, okay, well, the PETA person's probably not going to talk to you. So I think in that same regard, that I get why you would say that. I think that there's a lot of, oh, sorry. Okay. You said yes, Amir. Let me read what Amir has to say. The moment you say someone does not believe in God, you can go ahead and call them an atheist. It is in the own grammar of the word atheist, non-theist. Yeah. Yes, I agree. But also you think you can be agnostic and not be an atheist. Some people may not be sure anything is true, but lean more towards theism. I wouldn't say they are atheists. Yeah, I think maybe what you're talking about sounds like cultural Christianity, at least in the West. I do think that there is, I mean, first of all, we all agree here. I think that like definition wise makes a lot of sense. And yeah, atheist and theism, like, yes, I think that exactly what you're saying, Amir, makes a ton of sense. I think that it is expressly difficult to say one can be an atheist, and this is not me feeling any sort of way about atheism or theism or agnosticism. I struggle intellectually, academically, with the idea of atheism, specifically atheism, not agnosticism. Specifically with atheism, saying that a God doesn't exist, because I think that you would have to prove a lot of things that we still don't know about the universe in order to assert that to be true. But I guess at the end of the day, that same struggle of intellectualism kind of happens to, albeit a lesser extent, maybe roughly the same with theism. But I guess that's why it comes down. That's why it is a belief system. It took me a second to wrap my head around what I was thinking. It's academically challenging, but that's in part what makes it a belief system and not reality. Is we all have these different belief systems. Shocker. But I do struggle. I think specifically with atheism in that regard. I agree and think it is just absurd. It is just as absurd to claim that there is no God as to say there is a God. In my opinion, there's simply no reliable way to tell. Yeah, and that is why I come back to the idea, if there's, and this is why I guess not judge. This is why academically I understand theism and atheism. Again, we agree on agnosticism. We're going to put that in this like happy corner of it makes sense. Okay. Actually, first, let me see what Junical has to say. My beliefs allow me to be wrong about the way I see things. I don't believe in no God. It would be okay with me if I'm wrong. Okay, yeah. So we're gonna put agnosticism in this like comfy little corner of, based on the way that you two have explained this and based on my preconceived ideas of what agnosticism is, it just makes sense. Not saying I personally am agnostic, but to me it makes a lot of sense relative to the alternative. Although I cannot speak for all atheists, I believe that what most of them really reject is the notion of a specific type of God, Christian God as an example, due to contradictions or inconsistencies. Okay, yeah, so actually I do want to jump into that. So let's go back to what we were talking about before then. Atheism versus theism. I think that the idea, and again, intellectual misunderstanding could be the case of this, but once we understand, when the three of us and whoever else is watching has kind of put agnosticism into this nice comfy corner of it makes sense intellectually, then we have two other approaches that require you to have an axiom of either belief in this exists or belief that it doesn't exist. And the reason why you believe that thing usually is going to be based on some sort of evidence or proof. But since evidence or proof is impossible in this situation, in either case, whether you're atheist or a theist, because like we just, in the atheist case, we just don't have the science to back all of these, things that supposedly didn't happen through a creator. In the case of a theist, we don't have maybe like this literal proof that, let's say in the case of Christianity, Jesus is in the flesh and he walks around, in the flesh, and we can see him perform these miracles that, science that exists outside of, space, time, and all that. So the reason why I hold theism in a higher regard, intellectually speaking, is because I think that there seems to be more proof of like historical events in the case of theism rather than atheism. And the reason why I believe that is I think that atheism has a little bit more of a like a gap to bridge than theism does with regards to especially like the creation of the universe. Not necessarily the Big Bang and how that started. But let's just say let's suppose we understand how the Big Bang, like, you know, the universe came to be. I don't, and maybe you guys can fill in the gaps here for me, but I don't really understand how, let's just say we crack the code and, you know, we've achieved AGI, we understand, we have like the compute to be able to work out how the universe started, and we can prove it mathematically and through physics. I don't really understand how that invalidates the existence of God. I think that there is just like this constant loop that atheism has to do to kind of further step back to some creation story. And I don't really know. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm glad you disagree. If you haven't already heard here, sorry, I'm going to pause on what I was saying because I want to catch up with what Joe Nicole had to say. If you haven't already heard this, you should look up the 7-point scale of atheism. It isn't perfect. All right, hold on. Since we're just all chatting and have a good time, I'm actually going to run to the restroom first, but let me just like 7-point of 7-point. The Dawkins. Oh, okay. So yeah, Richard Dawkins, another guy that Alex O'Connor really respects. Give me like 30 seconds. I'm going to be right back. All right, I'm back. All right. All right. Let's see here. All right. Joe Nicole, are you still with me? Amir, are you still with me? I need to be able to get your guys' takes, especially on the atheism not having a bigger gap to bridge. I'm going to read the spectrum of theistic probability first, but I wanted to clarify with you, Joe Nicole, on this point. It wasn't so much that the creation story, like that's not really, I'm not going to die on that hill. For me, it's more of like the idea that both, in going back to my original premise, that agnosticism makes a lot of sense academically, and then we have the two on the outer side that, oh, what are these, like the Facebook little, I didn't know how the, all right, anyways, that really threw me off, the balloons. Okay, so agnosticism makes sense academically. Then you have theism and atheism. Both have gaps to bridge because they are not fully explained scientifically, and I don't know if it's really possible to get to the point in either case. So both, if you guys can accept the premise, then that means that both faith and both theism and atheism specifically are faith-based beliefs. I think the reason why I think that atheism has a gap to bridge larger than theism is not because of the provability or disprovability. The reason why I think atheism has a bigger gap to bridge is because this might be a little esoteric, and I'm not as learned as Alex O'Connor or Richard Dawkins or some of the incredible theologians on the other side of the spectrum. But I don't fully comprehend how I think it makes a lot more sense to believe and have faith based on historical evidence that we have, and then anecdotal experiences from others that have experienced God. And on the other side, for an atheist, it does not make as much sense to me to have faith in nothing. Like, I'm not saying that you don't have faith, because I've already established that my premise here is that I think atheism is a faith-based approach to a belief system. But I don't understand as much how you can believe, like, your belief is nothing. Not you don't believe anything, but your belief is nothing. It makes a lot more sense to me that you believe in something because of the historical evidence, the stuff that we've seen. I'm not, again, making a claim that there is more validity to like theism. It's more that, like, in any religious book, in a lot of the cases, like, you know, the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, the Tanakh, Buddhism, a lot of these cultures, like, there are real people that did exist, and so their faith is based on something that did happen in a lot of these cases. And so, again, not making some rejection of the fact that there's, like, more proof that God exists or whatever. I just think that in terms of establishing your belief systems, not you, Joe Nicole or Amir, but strict atheists versus strict theists. Let me catch up on some of these messages here. What have I missed? Here is what you may be missing with atheism. There is no assertion. Theists claim there is God. Burden of proof falls. I agree with that. I do agree with that. But I think, well, Joe Nicole, I thought we said that, like, agnosticism is not making that claim. I thought atheism was making the claim that there is no God. So I would agree with the premise that agnosticism isn't making any claim. So the burden of proof in the case if I was arguing. Again, I want to rewind here for, I don't know how to pronounce your name, sir, Fumic HK. If you have it, if you want to tell me how to pronounce that, I will pronounce it better. I understand that's not how that works. To give you a recap in case you're new, I'm not making a claim for either side. I am just interested in the philosophical component of the way we establish our belief systems. So I want to just disarm real quick. And then, yeah, now we can get into the root of the conversation. No bad blood here. So, Joe Nicole, if you could elaborate, because agnosticism makes sense for what you're saying, that there is no claim. It seems like atheists specifically make an assertion that there is no God, as based on what we were discussing before, even with, like, the non-stamp collector argument. So I agree that in the case of agnosticism versus theism, that the burden of proof does fall on theists. In which case, like, agnosticism academically, my belief system is Fukushima. Are you messing with me right now, or is it actually Fukushima? Because that is, I feel like I'm having a seizure. Is that, doesn't look like how it's spelled, but I will take your word for it that you're not just messing with me. But I'm happy to have you here. So agnosticism academically, to me, makes the most sense. It makes more sense than theism. Maybe construing atheism and strict naturalism. Okay, well, why don't I put a pin in trying to determine, because you're probably right. Again, I don't really have the definitions for it. Like, I'm very comfortable saying I don't know, which might be annoying, but I've never claimed to take that position. So I'm gonna read. We're gonna pause I'm gonna look into what naturalism is, because I know Alex O'Connor has talked about naturalism, but I haven't really looked past his videos. And so, you know, oh no, the two parts fuim. Oh, so it's fuim. Is it fuim? Let me know if it's fuim. But so, you know, sorry if it's not fuim. Fuim, if you just got here, we were just watching the Joe Wheeler versus Alex O'Connor podcast. Now we're just talking about, like, a subsect of what they were talking about. Anywho, Joe Nicole, I'm going to read the spectrum of theistic probability real quick, just to get a little bit of an idea of what I'm missing out on here. Okay, I'm just going to skip down to what looks like 7 bullet points of whatever the spectrum of theistic probability is. So I don't know too much about good enough. I'm sorry. I hope that I don't know. If you write down phonetically how it's supposed to be said, I'm gonna try to say it better. First, because I haven't answered Amir, what historical evidence do you see on the side of theism? All I was talking about there, Amir, was specifically like in the case of let's say the Quran. We know that Muhammad exists. We know that, and these are like very high level examples. We know for a fact that Jesus of Nazareth was a real person. And then the more that we've been digging up, like anthropologists have found like other things that have like conspired with events that took place in the Bible. So that's what I mean, historic evidence of theism. I'm purely talking about like the fact that like, oh no, we did acknowledge that these things literally happened, not the like more supernatural claims. Anyways, Dawkins' formulation, I'm looking off the screen because my TV is bigger and I can read it better. So all I know about Richard Dawkins is he's like a very popular atheist. From what I've experienced based on watching Alex O'Connor, he seems much less interested in changing his belief systems. I guess not even changing his belief systems, but what it seems like being open to a conversation about belief. Which is why I probably haven't spent as much time on his books and some of the other stuff he talks about, because I don't know, it's just not as fun to listen to someone that is dogmatic. For the record, I don't watch anything related to theists either. Alex O'Connor is the close to watching that I get to watching theist content. Okay, so The God Delusion, which he's the author of. So he's positing that there are statements that summarize one's place along the spectrum of theistic probability. Okay, so 1, strong theist, 100% probability of God in the worlds of Carl Jung. I do not believe I know. Okay. De facto theist, very high probability, but short of 100%. I don't know for certain, but strongly believe in God and live my life on the assumption that he's there. Leaning towards theism is higher than 50%, but not very high. I am very uncertain, but I am inclined to believe in God. Completely impartial, exactly 50%. God's non-existence, existence and non-existence are exactly equal probable. 5 is leaning towards atheism. I don't know whether God exists, but I'm inclined to be skeptical. Joe Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, but you sound like you are the 5 on that list. De facto atheist, very low probability, but short of 0. I don't know for certain, but I think God is very improbable. Or 6, I guess. You could be 5 or 6. And I live my life on the assumption that he's not there. Strong atheist. I know there is no God, with the same conviction as Jung knows there is one. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I was saying in regards like to way earlier in the chat about it being a spectrum where it's atheism here, agnosticism here, and then theism here. So I don't see that. I mean, I agree with him there. Individuals have placed themselves as a 1 due to strictness of religious doctrine against doubt. Most atheists do not consider themselves a 7. Arises from lack of evidence, and evidence can always change a thinking person's mind in print. Dawkins self-identified as a 6, and then later corrected himself to suggest a 6.9. Nice. Okay, yeah, 6 makes sense. Fuima, you said... In this context, agnosticism refers to a lack of knowledge, while atheism refers to a lack of belief. Agnosticism is considered to be a part of atheism. Okay, yeah, so I don't know if you missed what we were talking about earlier, but that's what I was kind of asking Joe Nicole and Amir, is if they would consider agnosticism as a subsect of atheism, but I think Dawkins' formulation separates it a little bit more, makes it more like a spectrum rather than agnosticism fitting underneath atheism. So I would, to me, it makes more sense to have it as a spectrum and not like a subcategory of atheism. 6 makes sense. I think that this is where I maybe the first sentence underneath. Let me see if I can zoom in because I don't. Can you guys read this? Would it be helpful if I could zoom in more? I think so. I don't agree with this. Wait, actually, hold on. Argues that while there appear to be plenty of individuals who place themselves to okay, actually no, I guess I do agree with that. He doesn't say that everyone that places himself as a one does so due to religious doctrine. It's just that many do. So I guess yeah, I agree with that. Most atheists do not consider themselves a 7 because atheism arises from a lack of evidence, and evidence can always change everything. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Yeah, I think that the thing is, I think that there are two outside of agnosticism. They both, I don't know what like your perspective is on this, but because nobody really said anything regarding the idea that atheism. Actually, wait, no. Fuima did, I think. Fuima said atheism refers to a lack of belief. I disagree with that because I think that in and of itself, again, I understand that, as Joe Nicole shared with me with this, it is a spectrum, but I do think even seeing this and understanding now what the 7 spectrum of theistic probability is, I would still argue that atheism is also in and of itself a faith-based approach. Just as, like, you can be a de facto theist, you can also be a de facto atheist. I think that if we assume 2 and 6 to be the average person, 2 being I don't know for sure, then, and 2 and 6 being I don't know for certain, then the reason why you have a belief system such that, explained in the second half of that sentence, where I live my life on the assumption that he either is there or is not there, then you believe that thing to be true, which is a faith-based approach, which means it's not a lack of belief. It is actually a belief itself. I don't know if one is here's the thing. This is where I think it would be interesting to have your guys' opinion. Again, I'm not saying that one is right or wrong. And I feel like I don't have to clarify with you guys at that point. I feel like we're kind of roughly on the same page here. I think Joe Nicole and I for sure, I think at least intellectually agree on agnosticism making the most sense. And I also understand, Joe Nicole, why, now that you describe yourself as a 6, why you explain the way that you've explained yourself makes a lot more sense now, and why you explain to your Christian friends the way you explain yourself to your Christian friends. But I also understand that you're kind of borderline an atheist. But here's the thing that I don't think we'll agree with because of the last 2 comments you guys have made in the chat. I think that while, yes, 1 and 7 are kind of like, they are the extremes. To me, 1... Actually, no. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take back what I was going to say. I'll let you guys know what I was going to say so it doesn't sound completely disjointed. What I was going to say was I think that 1 makes more sense than 7. Reading 7 again, I don't think that, but I also think that I disagree with you guys that 1 in 7 are wild or dishonest. Oh, right. Thank you for getting back to that. I forgot we were talking about the gap to bridge. Thank you. I appreciate that. I knew that there was something there while I was reading this Wikipedia page. So, first of all, hold on. I need to check what time it is. Okay. Good on time. First of all, thanks for bringing that up. I want to address what you said because I want to know more about your experience if you're open to sharing it. I understand this is kind of a weird form to do so, but like, you know, you don't have to if you don't want to. First, I want to kind of explain my position on why I don't think 1 in 7 are wild. Because I've already established that my personal belief is that atheism and theism, specifically, again, don't talk about agnosticism, just atheism and theism, are fundamentally a value and faith-based approach to life. I also don't think you can be an atheist unless you're a 7, but you can be a agnostic if you are, I would say, 4 through 6. I just don't think that they're that crazy. I think that a 1, I agree with what Dawkins says regarding that there are a lot of individuals that would place themselves as a 1 due to strictness of religious doctrine against doubt. I think that you find that there are 2 reasons for that, at least 2 reasons that I can think of off the top of my head. I think of one with Christianity specifically, like evangelical Christianity. I don't know if any of you guys have ever watched like Good Mythical Morning. It's a great YouTube channel hosted by Rhett and Link. They're just 2 awesome guys. They do a podcast and a bunch of other stuff. I'm not selling it super well. You should check it up on your own time. Good Mythical Morning. They were both formerly evangelical Christians turned atheists or agnostic. I'm not exactly sure where they landed on that. They've actually done... Actually, Joe Nicole, you might have actually done seen the podcast Alex O'Connor did with Rhett McLaughlin from Good Mythical Morning. The reason why I don't necessarily... So the 2 reasons why I understand what Dawkins is saying regarding that there are plenty of individuals that place themselves as a 1 due to the strictness of religious doctrine come from evangelical Christianity. A lot of these people that are born into that make it their like community, and it's really hard to get out of that community, especially because there's a lot of, I think, shame related to leaving like that evangelical specific sect of Christianity. And then I think that same with Islam too. Like people are born into Islam. And so leaving Islam when it's like it's like you're not just Muslim by faith, like it's like literally the culture and again community that you're brought up into. I think it comes down to community. So a lot of the people that would place themselves as 1 due to the strictness of religious doctrine, I think are also afraid of losing their community on top of that. But I also think, conversely, that a 1 in 7, because I think Fuima disagrees. I think, Fuima, I wonder if you disagree with me regarding the 1 in 7 not being super crazy. So I just gave you a reason why 1 is why I agree with Dawkins for his explanation of a 1 being a strong theist. The reason why I don't think it's necessarily all that crazy is because there are just people that have a very strong faith. And I think that applies for both 1 and 7. It's an intuition. And I don't necessarily think that we can fully discount intuition. I don't think that we can label people as crazy for having an intuition about these things, regardless if it's for or against our opinion. And again, in that same breath, I can also say that I'm not saying one side is better than the other, because I just said that I think that both of them are faith-based approaches to life, and I think that if you have a strong enough faith that you can be a 1 or a 7. Is it intellect? And I think maybe Joe Nicole, where you and I would maybe go back to this, because it seems like we generally agree on things, is that it's not very academic. So if we mean crazy with that, or like it's just like academically it doesn't make too much sense as compared to something between a I mean, hell, I would say if we want to be completely honest, like just based on these definitions, I would say 4 through 6 make the most sense academically, right? I don't think that any of you guys, it seems like both of you probably agree somewhere on the 4 through 6 scale. I wish Amir was here to give his input too, but alas. Let me catch up with the chat. My lived experience, a lot of Christians. Yeah, okay. So I read that. Fuima said he disagrees with me. Joe Nicole said, I was raised Presbyterian. I'm now my family's first and only atheist. I felt ashamed of my seeming inability to believe in God for a long time, and my life has been much freer since atheism. I'm super happy for you. I'm happy that you feel free. Oh, Amir is here. Nice. Amir, you just popped up out of nowhere. Glad to see you again. You scared me. Thought you got lost. Thanks for sharing, Joe. Nicole, I understand that seems kind of that seems actually very difficult. My girlfriend's from a very large family, raised Catholic, and she was the first of her family to move away from the church, and it was like a very Opus Dei sort of Catholicism. So like it like I understand like your story kind of lines up with hers a little bit. I don't think she would describe herself as an atheist. Again, I know that based on our previous conversations, neither would you based on this spectrum. But like both of those things make a lot of sense to me. And I feel for you because my girlfriend was not, and I don't want to overshare for her, because she does social media for a living. She's much more successful than I am online. But she, okay, I guess I don't want to share too much, overshare for her, but I'll give you the TLDR because it's something that you experienced too. She was like, ostracized from her, mostly on her parents' part. The siblings wanted her to be around, but like the parents wouldn't let her into the house, wouldn't let her sleep there. Like after she moved out for college, like she couldn't come home and visit. She'd have to meet up with her siblings at like a coffee shop and stuff. It was really tough. But it was not the mom. Like the mom is a sweetheart. It was just the dad had more of a hardline stance of like her decisions. But yeah. Anyways, not to get too deep into that. I'm sure we could talk about that at some future time as well. Maybe once I get more of an approval from her. Joe Nicole, I feel that you are much less likely to find an atheist who has as much faith as a Christian person, at least. I agree with that. And I don't think that those people are represented enough. I don't think that those people are represented enough in terms of the dialogue, which is why I think that, I mean, beating a dead horse here because we both like the guy, Alex O'Connor is just such an awesome figure for both theists and atheists. But I think that maybe the difficult thing, and Amir, I'm trying to understand what you mean here first. Okay, actually, before I reply to what Joe Nicole had to say, I'm just going to read through the rest of the chat, so maybe I can do more of a comprehensive reply. I don't think it's dishonest. I think it's a lack of rigor in the search for truth. That's interesting that you use the word truth. Could you elaborate more on what you mean, like, by truth here? Because I think that, like I said at the top of this video, or like at the top of the stream, I think that there's way too many conversations that Alex O'Connor's had about, like, I'm sure Joe Nicole, you've seen his stuff where he talks about, like, does this table actually exist? I think that some of these things can get a little too esoteric for, like, the topic at hand, but I do think it's important to understand, like, what you mean, Amir, for, like, the search for truth. because I do think at the end of the day, that comes back to faith. In faith in either belief something exists or the faith that something absolutely does not exist. I just can't fathom being a 1 or 7. That makes sense to me. I think that it sounds like you're pretty academically minded, or at least like interested. I mean, earlier you said you want to believe or find some sort of belief, and I think that that's really cool. I think it posits yourself as somebody that's actually curious and is willing to hear other people's perspectives. Which, if nothing else, of it changing your belief systems, it's fun to have conversations with people and to be able to get other ideas and not feel like it's attacking your personality, or your personhood. Amir, in my opinion, denying the possibility of being wrong is a dishonest thing. Oh wait, did I miss what Fuima said earlier, or what? Wait. In my opinion, denying... I'm not understanding what Fuima's talking about here. Possibility of being wrong is dishonest thing, regardless of if you're wrong or not, just my opinion. Yeah, my siblings tend to take it better than my parents. A statement is true if it aligns with reality. Okay, so there's a lot of interesting stuff here. Jonah Cole, you're my people for sure. Amir and Fuima, so are you. But I mean, just from like Jonah Cole's the only one that's shared their life experience. So I'm just gonna say, Jonah Cole, you're my person here. Yeah, that was her experience too. So that's just really tough. And it is understandably a good reason why people a lot of the times, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but just to say I have empathy for you, is that it definitely leaves a sour, bitter taste in someone's mouth when people like their parents that they look up to or have a relationship with don't accept, these new ideas that they're having and allowing them to explore those things. I think that is very academically dishonest. And I think that if you are a theist, that you should encourage people to search for the truth. Because if you are truly in this, maybe this is oversimplifying it, so bear with me. I think that if you are a theist, that you should encourage the exchange of ideas, which a lot of theists do. There are a lot of theologians that study multiple religions and still come to their own theological conclusions. You should encourage people, if you think people should believe in the same faith that you believe, I think that you should encourage them to do their own research and truly seek truth, as Amir put it. Anything other than that is academically dishonest, and if they come to different conclusions, then so be it. At least they found what they think is truth in that moment in time of this stage of reality. Going back, hey Jacob, nice to meet you. We're talking about something super light here, so welcome in. If you have a perspective, we were just watching a podcast, and now we're talking about a very esoteric part of faith, not whether or not religion or God is real, just like the idea of believing in something. Fuima, your statement regarding a statement is true if it aligns with the reality. I think the problem is that reality can change over time, right? Like our understanding of reality changes over time. So I think we have to understand that reality in the way that we experience it, which I believe is what matters more than the bedrock truth of what reality is, i.e., going back to the conversation that Alex O'Connor was having with these three guys. Does this table exist? Well, everybody in this chat right now, I would imagine, unless you're going to lie to me right now, sees that table in the video. Everybody at that podcast table also sees that table. They're putting their phones on it. They have their mics on, their water cups. That is their experience of reality. And I think that, Levi, I think that's the wrong conversation. This is the wrong forum for that. I'm not even arguing for a specific faith. We're just talking here, man. Anyways, I'm going to finish what I had to say. I think what you said is interesting, Fuima. This kind of lines up with what Amir says about the search for truth, the idea of reality. Our understanding of reality does not define reality. I agree with that statement. The statement is true of or false, regardless of what we believe. Okay. Sure. That elaboration I agree with. What you say there, I agree with. But at the end of the day, I think that we have to figure out then how to define, like, figure out how we can be 100% sure something is the truth, right? Oh, actually, I guess, sorry, I'm rereading your message earlier, Fuima. It sounds like we agree. The order of these messages and what you guys are referring to in the chat, there's like a slight delay on the chat, so I might be getting this mixed up. It sounds like I generally agree with the statement you made at Amir. What's my take right now? I love you, Levi. That's my take. Okay, yeah. Okay, cool. So I think what it kind of feels like we're talking about here. What the heck? What it feels like we're talking about here, Joe Nicole, I hope you're still here. Oh, Robot. Is Robot? Oh, I thought I was talking to Amir this whole time. Hi, Robot. You're a different person. I thought you were Amir. So, yeah, Fuima, I agree with that. I think that that's like... So, Jacob, we're not necessarily discussing faith and whether it's right or wrong. To recap for everyone chiming in now, if you scroll up in the chat, Joe Nicole, Amir, Fuima, and I were talking about like different belief systems and not necessarily the validity of which we think is right or wrong, but more so the meta conversation around, like, I guess the academic side of these belief systems. So TLDR. Oh, yeah. Fuima, I'm coming to you from 3 minutes in the future. Sorry to hear that, man or woman or they, them. Fuima, I'm sorry. Hi, I love you. So back where was I, Jacob? So we've kind of posited that academically agnosticism makes the most sense of I don't know for sure, so how could I be, either like fully faithful in something that would be very difficult to believe, to understand exists, or on the opposite side of atheism, being atheism, how could I be so sure that something doesn't exist? I've postured that both are faith-based belief systems because atheism needs more, like complete atheism, 100% believing that there is absolutely no God, requires more understanding of the universe than we could possibly ever have, or at least, let me take that back, more than we have currently. So at our current understanding of how the universe operates, atheism is a faith-based approach. So we're not really talking about the validity of any specific religion. I hope you do join the conversation, Jacob, because I'd love to hear your perspective as well. You should read some Nietzsche. I think that suits you. I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like everybody's heard of Nietzsche. I don't know why you'd say why you think it suits me. I'd be interested to know why you think Nietzsche suits me. But isn't he, I thought he was the one that said, isn't he the kind of depressing one that everybody, like all the emo sad kids, Nietzsche, hold on, let me see how to spell Nietzsche. Nietzsche. There we go. Got it. Nietzsche, famous. Let's just to get a quick TLDR. Isn't he the one that like a lot of like goth kids back in the 2000s used to use as like a, like, nothing matters? Or am I misquoted? Is that somebody Is that somebody else? Oh, shoot. Okay. Joe Nicole, I don't know if you've left already, but it was really nice talking to you. I hope you good luck with whatever you're studying. And yeah, these fireworks are for you. I really appreciate your conversation. I hope you'll come back and we can chat more. Good luck in studying. Bye, Joe. Joe Nicole. My bad. Thanks for all your insight. Okay, so thanks for everyone that's tuning in. Levi, let me get to your... I think it doesn't matter what you believe in. You should just have some humanity and morals. Jacob, I appreciate your elaboration. It's oftentimes very difficult to over chat be able to know if someone's being sarcastic or not. So I appreciate that. I wouldn't have taken it as you were being sarcastic. But I do appreciate you elaborating. Let me just address these in order. First of all, Levi, I don't know if I would be interested. I'm interested, but I don't know based on what you were saying earlier. I need you to know why you think it suits me, because I think maybe you missed something. Because I don't believe in nothing, or that having. I don't know what got you to that, but. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think humanity and morals are important. I don't think that being a theist is necessarily for everyone. I'm not at all arguing for, and I think everybody that was in the original conversation, aside from Fuima, because Fuima knows where I stand on some of this stuff anyways, aside from maybe my understanding of what faith means. I'm not arguing for or against believing in God or not believing in God. We're discussing the meta conversation around the different belief systems. So could you give a short definition of what you understand faith to mean? Yeah, I guess the way that I would describe faith is not having the full picture. In other words, the full picture being you don't have something so... This I guess this gets really tough too, because I think that you can have a meta conversation around this, like maths as well. But like, let's just say from our current understanding that 2 + 2 = 4 is ground truth. Okay, 2 + 2 = 4 is a ground truth that we understand to be wholly true, and there's nothing that could possibly disprove that. That is our current understanding of maths in this case. I think that faith, like anything outside of something that we can prove, such as 2 + 2 = 4, is not having the full picture, knowing that it is for sure true, but having the willingness to accept that it's true based on some innate feeling. So anything that's faith would be something that we can't prove 100% in the contrary. So like faith would be different than delusion. I think delusion would be if I sat here and told you with all of my heart, and whether or not I believed it, 2 + 2 is 10. I think that that's a bit of a delusion. So faith to me is the dogmatic or building your life on the axiom or the framework that something exists to be true, even though you don't have the science proof to, I guess further prove your reasoning. I agree. So, no, Fuima, you and I are on the same page. I want to continue. What you're saying is very interesting, but I don't want to, since Jacob is starting to chime in more, I want to make sure that, Jacob, I hear you and your question gets answered. Has anyone in the history of ever been able to provide any proof for a singular thing that is supernatural? I would say no. Right? But I think that's the tricky thing. When you consider something like I think something that's worth investigating, since we've just looked at the spectrum of theistic probability and also Nietzsche, I think something else that we should look at, we can hear if you guys are interested, or you guys can on your own time. I don't want to force something down your throats, but I just want to go off of what Jacob said because I think it's interesting. So I just said, based on his question, has anyone in the history of ever been able to provide any proof of a singular thing that is supernatural? Yeah, I said no. I don't think that we have. But I think that the thing that's interesting about that is I don't know if something is supernatural anymore once we can prove the existence of it, right? Because, like, isn't proving the existence, like, an actual understanding of that thing? In the sense that, like, we understand, like, there is our current exception in Fuyama. We're going to go... I think we generally agree on the principle of Fuyama, but just hold on. I'm not arguing with you on this point. Our current understanding of reality, I think a lot of us would agree that our current understanding of reality does not mean it is the truth, like the ground bedrock truth that is an absolute truth. Our current understanding of reality, we have something called the Shroud of Turin, Jacob. The Shroud of Turin is supposedly the cloth that was used at Jesus Christ's burial, and it has imprinted like his entire body. There are blood marks consistent with, like, the wounds that he had, like, on his wrists and on his feet. And there was an attempt to disprove the Shroud of Turin that dated it back to, like, the medieval times, through and this was back in, like, the 70s, and then more recently we re-examined the Shroud of Turin, and supposedly, what was it? Supposedly the amount of energy it would have taken to create such an imprint is something like some unbelievable amount of energy in a very short period of time, like fractions of a second. Otherwise, like, the shroud would have been burnt up into a crisp or incinerated. Basically, science doesn't have an explanation yet for the new understanding that we have of the Shroud of Turin, which, based on most recent dating, dates it back to the time of around Jesus' death. So while I don't disagree with you, Jacob, I don't know how much I fully accept that is a like an argument for, like, a great, one of the best arguments for agnosticism or atheism, and I think there are plenty. I don't know if that one is one that I would necessarily, like, from an academic perspective, die on, but maybe there is, like, some more conclusive evidence that points contrary to what I just said, which, again, I'm not arguing for the existence or non-existence. It's the meta conversation. Just want to be clear, we're all on the same page here. I also think that goes back to the idea of faith, right? So, I need to scroll down here. Let's see, what have I missed? All right, I have to catch up. You guys have been yapping, man. Okay, so this seems like a conversation between Fuyama and Levi. What do you believe in? What do you consider to be moral? My morals are, if you're good to others, you shall receive the same treatments in life. Morals aren't what you say, but what you do. Being good when it's easy doesn't count. True values hold up when the pressure's on. Yeah, you know what? Actually, so Levi, I think, makes a very interesting point, because I think when there's that Jubilee video with, what's his name? Jordan Peterson. It was funny because they originally called it One Christian versus 100 Atheists or something like that. And then it was so bad that they had to change it to Jordan Peterson versus 100 Atheists. And I think it was that video that he made a point on, like, your morals are, like, literally the hill you die on. Like, you would defend your life with these principles, but it's, like, it's kind of not entirely true. Alex O'Connor pointed out, okay, well, you wouldn't die necessarily for something that you believe to be 100% true with conviction. If someone held a gun to your head and said, there's a chair in front of you. So imagine there's a chair in front of you. Someone with a gun to your head said, deny this chair exists, or else I will, unalive you. Most rational people would deny the existence of the chair, right? What's his name? Jordan Peterson says, you don't know me, you don't know what I would do, which I think when push comes to shove, he would also deny the existence of the chair. I just don't. So on that note, Levi, I think I kind of disagree with what you're saying. Not 100%, but in the sense that you have to hold these true values when the pressure's on. There's also the concept of, like, self-preservation. So I think we have to kind of include that as well. Nietzsche on Faith said, faith often means refusing to face the truth. Religion can make life feel weaker, not stronger. True strength comes from creating your own values, not following old beliefs. I would be interested, I guess, reading Nietzsche, but I don't agree with that. Not full out disagree, but I think that that is rather I think that's rather incomplete. I don't think that the statement faith often means refusing to face the truth. First of all, wait, hold on. Would you consider that faith? Okay. Maybe I should reply to Fuima before I address what Levi said on Nietzsche. I see clouds outside. The weather app says it's going to rain. It's raining in the next town from where the wind comes. I believe it's going to rain. I don't have 100% confidence. I don't know if I 100% agree with. I guess if you are talking to me about this clouds analogy, I don't really, or this weather app analogy, I don't necessarily think I agree with the premise, because I think that also when you use a weather app, weather apps don't actually have a 100% it's going to rain. Like the percentage that we're seeing on the weather app is not like a percentage of whether or not it's going to rain. It's giving a percentage coverage of the area that it is going to rain. So, like, if you are in Los Angeles and it says, like, the weather app for Los Angeles says it's like 80%, like, I used to think that it's like 80% chance it's going to rain. It means that, like, there's 80% coverage of that area that the app is, what is it? The radius of the coverage of that app for that specific area, the percentage of that area it's going to rain. If you believe it's going to rain, oh, hey, Amir, what's up, man? I'm like way behind in the conversation, so just give me a sec. I believe it's going to rain. I don't have 100% confidence. If you don't have 100% confidence, what is... Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I don't 100% agree with the premise, but I guess, like, in good faith, I'll say yes. I'm not sure if that really applies to... It's tricky. But yeah, I'm just going to say yes so I can continue reading through here, because I don't have enough reason to say no otherwise. It comes down to burden of proof to me. If you have two people, one tells you there's a ghost in the corner, the other says there's not a chair in the corner, do you believe both to be logical? Wait. One says... Jacob, wait, can you give me... One tells you there's a ghost in the corner. The other says, no, there's a chair in the corner. Do you believe both to be logical? I think that well, here's the thing is, I've already postured, and Fuima's the only one that's been here for this, I think. Or actually, no, Amir's here too. So Amir and Fuima were here when I said that I think agnosticism makes the most sense in terms of like academic understanding. So when you talk about burden of proof, I think burden of proof exists in both the theist's case as well as the atheist case, because both are like a belief system that either something does exist or something doesn't exist. And this is like, I believe this to be true, or I believe this to specifically not be true. Where agnosticism sits is, I don't know whether or not it's true. So agnosticism doesn't have to have there's no burden of proof on agnosticism, which I think makes it the most logically easy to comprehend. So Jacob, I know that might not be super exciting answer, but that's how I see that. I appreciate that you guys are just having a conversation by yourselves, because I'm yapping my ass off and you guys just keep talking and it takes me a while to catch up. So I'm glad that you guys are talking to each other. The universe doesn't care about some math BS made up by us. It just does what it wants, but math helps us to make things more understandable. Yeah, I mean, we don't have a full, complete understanding of, like, science is incomplete. I think I don't think you can dismiss math as being some made up BS necessarily. I do agree that it helps us, like, for this specific understanding, that it does help us understand things more. But I think it's kind of difficult to just call it made up BS. Same thing with the shroud. Burden isn't on science to disprove it, though you'd have to use science to both prove or disprove. So Jacob, I agree with that 100%. So Jacob, that's why I was kind of saying with the shroud, I specifically think it's difficult, because the person that originally led the efforts in, like, learning more about the shroud was some guy in, like, the 70s or 80s that was an atheist that was trying to disprove the validity of Christianity. So I think that in terms of, like, having a reasonable, like, in terms of, like, proving or disproving supernatural things, I think that having an atheist research something, as long as they are interested or open to the idea of changing their mind, whether or not it happens, I don't care. It's more just like, you don't want too many people doing science that aren't willing to be flexible on their belief systems in any regard, right? I think that having an atheist do the research originally is great for this specific reason. I think because the original burden of proof for the research, because I don't know how much research was done prior to this study done in the 70s or 80s, this carbon dating. But in modern, as far as modern science goes, what religion are you, Cupcake? Who are you talking to? Though you'd have to use science to both prove or disprove. I don't know, man. I just think it's interesting. Fuima, people consider different things to be good. As example, some people think voluntary euthanasia is a good thing. Some think it's terrible. Okay, wait. I need to go back to... Oh yeah, Fuima, just like to clarify, I'm not saying that, like, his takes were, I'm not making a claim on either side of the conversation for that specific Jubilee video. I just want to know, like, I want you to know that I agree it is because of what he said, not because he did a bad job. people consider... Damn, I haven't even gotten to where Amir says I'm back yet. I just know because I saw it on my screen. Fuyama, the one thing I'd say about different things to be good or bad is I feel like that there are some general moral principles that we follow. But I think generally I agree with your take. I think like things like stealing, I think generally are across different creeds and religions and races and whatever. People think stealing's wrong. Yeah, but I think most people would have the same things on morals, so helping. Okay, that makes sense. Sorry, guys. I know you guys are probably asking me questions, but like I'm trying to like give thought out. I know it's just like I'm just kind of yapping, but I am trying to like give my perspective and wholly answer your questions. So I'm gonna miss some context. Like Levi asked why at some point. I don't even know what he was asking about. The universe doesn't care about some math BS made up by us. Oh, okay. So it just does what it wants. There's a universal language for every human. Would you agree on that? I agree with what Levi. I agree with what you're saying about the math being a universal language for every human. So I really don't know if Amir and excuse me, not Amir. If Levi and Fuyama are talking to each other or to me. But blah blah blah. Anyways, Amir, is it possible to have 100% confidence in everything and anything? I think that's a good question. Levi says nah, but the more you do stuff, the more confidence you get in that. So I kind of agree with Levi, but I think it's also at the same point we have to consider like, what about when you? This is I'm not claiming I feel this way, but just as like a challenge to your statement here about the more you do stuff, the more confidence you get in that. Let's take the idea of flipping a quarter. Let's say you get, the extremely low probability chance that you flip 10 heads in a row. I would not say I feel any more confident that I'm going to flip a heads than a tails on that next, just based on probability of things. That I'm going to flip a heads rather than a tails on that particular roll, even though I've already hit 10 heads in a row. You know what I mean? Levi, not even in that you exist as Descartes posits. I don't know. Sorry, Amir. I'm kind of lost. With experience comes confidence. It's a byproduct of it. All right, refer to what I said about the quarter analogy. So by that definition, outside hard soul, bro, what the hell is? Am I gonna get flagged if I research what this phrase is? Only one's own mind is sure to exist, and that everything else include. Let me zoom in. Okay, I think that's interesting. I think, yeah, this is actually... Did not know that that's what this idea is called, but that is... I appreciate you, Fuyama, because that is... I think that's kind of at the beginning. I know we're so long past watching the podcast now that eventually I hope I get to watch through. But I think that's kind of what Alex was saying at the beginning of this podcast as well. It's hard to really know. He references like you could think you're experiencing this life, like your body might not even be here, your body might be in a vat somewhere, kind of alluding to like the Matrix stuff. Okay, whoa, who's getting heated? What's going on here? Come on, guys, don't get heated. What's going on? Amir, he said no earlier. What religion are you, Cupcake? Who are we talking to? Oh, talking to me. Oh, Levi. Hey, man. Levi, very brother Levi, I don't know if you're trolling, man. I'm like so honestly confused by it. I love you. Calling, if you are like being genuine and you are, because I feel like saying like, by the way, I'm 17 is like kind of a meme. But if you are genuinely serious, I just want to like give you some advice. I have no bad feelings towards you. In fact, I appreciate that you're being very honest. Calling someone a cupcake isn't exactly a very nice thing to say to someone. It sounds very like you're talking down to someone, which like if you are, that's okay. That's like fine by me. I don't really take any problem with that, but like if you are genuine, calling someone cupcake when you're asking them what their religion is not a very nice way to talk to someone. But that's my opinion. And Fuima, yeah, I appreciate you, man. Fuima, you're a nice person. Probably aware that this isn't the best way to have a conversation. Yeah, but like, it's just so hard. I wish that we could I wish I could just like share the full context of the conversation to people that were not here earlier on, like you, Amir, and Joe Nicole were, because then things kind of get lost in translation, and then there's way too much misunderstanding, and then it sounds like we're really on the like different pages, but oftentimes, you know, we actually mostly agree, and I think that that's the case, at least for us. Jacob, agnosticism is weird. Saying you don't know to whether or not it's more logical to believe whether or not a ghost or a chair is in the corner seems dishonest. We know chairs exist, not ghosts. To me, it sounds like what you're saying, Jacob, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously. It sounds like the way that you're posturing the conversation is there's either God or there's science, which I don't necessarily think is at least I don't fully agree with that from an academic perspective. I don't think that they are mutually exclusive. So I don't think agnosticism is intellectually dishonest. I think if we were to go by actually no, I think I'm just going to end that point there because I still have more to catch up on. I think that I don't think agnosticism is weird because I don't think that science and belief in God or some sort of religion is like they exist outside of one another. Levi, you're calling someone a main character, has main character syndrome mixed with narcissism. I don't know what you're referring to, but yeah, anywho. You are not familiar with Rene Descartes. I think, therefore, I am. Man, I should just get to where you guys are at because I don't know who, if you're talking to me or if you're talking to each other. I'm not calling you dishonest. I'm saying it's saying the agnostic standpoint is often disingenuous. I don't know. Is the ultimate form of fence sitting. Yeah, so world. I'm just gonna catch up to you guys. What do I have in my left hand right now? Do you believe it's a pen? I just think that I don't know who you're saying you're not calling dishonest, Jacob. I don't think you were calling me dishonest. I think we were having a reasonable conversation. I know that a lot of people think that agnosticism is fence sitting. Joe Nicole, who's here earlier, described themselves as agnostic. And I think that if we're, and maybe, again, maybe you and I are thinking this, here's another meta for us. maybe you and I, Jacob, are having a different conversation or framing the conversation differently in such that I think that when I describe something as being what seems the most academically legitimate, I would say that the idea of not assuming that you know 100% of something to be true and something to 100% to, okay, let me actually take that back. Saying something that is 100% true, i.e. God or like some religious view, versus saying something is 100% not true, you know that there is no God or religion is false. I think agnosticism at least begs the question that they don't know and we don't have the full picture. And then we went through earlier that there's a spectrum of this. Anyways. I don't know. That's just my personality. I mix sarcasm with my real opinion. It's called infotainment, so info entertainment. Yes, Alex Hormozy. Also, first time I heard someone say infotainment was through Alex Hormozy. Levi, I don't think you're a bad person, but it's just kind of funny, I guess. That's social competence for me, mixing smart stuff, but bringing it to the audience with a nice drop of entertainment. Okay, so maybe we're trolling. I don't know. I think to me that seems like I think your comment on that's social competence for me, mixing smart stuff but bringing it to the audience with a nice drop of entertainment. I'm just going to assume you meant that in good faith. To me, cupcake, if that's what you're talking about, seems a little like derogatory, but like sounds like you meant it in good faith, so cool, man. I like your spice on life. If you told me, Jacob says to... Oh, I finally caught up. Holy crap. If you told me that there are options are a pen or let's say a little fairy, logically we could conclude that it's likely a pen. I'm talking about things that we know exist versus supernatural claims. Before responding, I have to say that between grabbing a pen and... Oh, wow, that's funny. You guys are on the same page. I appreciate you chatting. I have to go coach some baseball. Good topping. I'll drop a sub. You came across my suggested, so I'll try to pop in from time to time. Hey, Jacob, it's nice talking to you. I hope you have good luck with baseball practice or coaching. I'm sure that that's tough. Yeah, man, I hope you'll be around sometime. I really appreciate your insight. If you're ever in SF, let's go see a Giants game. I just went to my first one not too long ago, and it was pretty tight. It's right on the water, so it's hard to not like, yeah, I don't know, hard to not like baseball when you've got a really good view associated with it. All right, let me channel Jacob, and Jacob, I'm gonna do an absolute dog water impression of you, because Fuima needs someone to argue with. So, Fuima channeling my Jacob Beck. If I mess this up, I'm sorry. Man, right as I get to the bottom, I need you guys to start talking again. And wherever Amir went, brother, I need you to finish this thought about Descartes. What's non-theism? And how is that difference with atheism? Is a range of both religious and non-religious attitudes characterized by the absence of a espoused belief in the existence of God or gods. Non-theism has generally been used to describe apathy. Oh, I saw a reel about this recently. Excuse me. Silence towards the subject of gods or gods different from atheism or active belief in any gods. I just don't really understand that, though. I don't really understand how that could be a form of theism, because can't you be... Oh, wait. Okay, I guess you can be religious while also being a non-theist. Like, you could believe something's true while also not caring. Hey, Jacob, have a good one, man. Can't Ketcha. I might add you on Discord as well. I don't use mine very much, but yeah, maybe I'll hit you up too. Have fun, man. Man. Bro, I have no idea if you're serious or not. You saying you're German, I think it makes a lot more sense about your your general disposition. Wait, so all right. So are you in the US now, or are you still in Germany, Levi? I need to understand this more. No, I don't want to see your ID. I believe that you're 17. It's more just like I don't understand if your general disposition was more sincere or if it was just trolling. Hey, Baroque? Yeah, Alex O'Connor is sick. I don't know Joe Foley, so I'll check him out. I actually do. Your advice is solicited. I don't think I know Joe Foley. I don't think I've heard of him. Oh, I don't really know him. Oh, he runs something called Unsolicited Advice. I get that now. Okay, you weren't saying your advice was unsolicited. I think I saw. Didn't he recently do a video with Alex O'Connor? Yeah, here it is. Oh, it wasn't that recent. Okay. Oh, nice. Thanks for following along, Baroque. Appreciate you, man. You're welcome anytime. I'll have to check him out. Well, since you're new, since I think you probably just tuned in, we were just discussing watching the Joe Weller versus Alex O'Connor podcast, which I still haven't finished because we kind of got off on a fat tangent. We're talking about validity of like belief systems, not the actual validity of like is there a god or isn't there, but more so like the meta conversation of like academically how sound are atheism, agnosticism, and theism, and not the general like belief in is one good or is one bad. Anyways, yeah, you guys, yeah, I had no idea. Alex O'Connor is like the only real atheism / theism podcast video media that I really consume. And I think I started watching it because of some video he did with Rhett McLaughlin from Good Mythical Morning. And I just like that he's very open and is not incredibly assertive about his perspective. I think it's really refreshing, especially as something that is like so core to people's belief systems. It's just really nice to be able to sit there and kind of question things while he kind of uses his degree and understanding of theology. Specifically, I don't know how much outside of Christianity he knows, but specifically his understanding of Christianity as well as philosophy, I think is very, very interesting. Also, Fuima, I don't know who Sir Sick or Logic is, so maybe that's why I'm missing the mark with Levi's sense of humor, but I appreciate Levi nonetheless. If there's one above, he should give me some nice beer. Classics classic kraut take. Just need some nice beer. It's good for video replies, but in text format or real-time conversations, it just comes up as condescending. Yeah, okay, so this is what I'm saying. So I agree with Fuima. How do I contact you to be my personal advisor on my belief systems? Yeah, I'm sorry. That's just my personality. I don't know. I don't code switch, so I'm just always like this using sarcasm coupled with information. Sir, I think you might be on the spectrum. Tell me how you feel about this photo. Don't peek. I'll tell you when to look. How do you feel about these? Ironically, missing the mark would be another decent example of that way of talking. Oh. Okay, so interestingly enough, the only time I've ever been called Cupcake outside of Levi using it, who is a decade younger than me apparently, is an old wrestling coach or an old wrestling trainer who like fully was being condescending, but in a way to get us pumped up. So I guess in American English, it's more of like it for sure is a condescending thing to say to someone in person, but when it was used in the context of like, yeah, it was my coach, it makes sense. When it's a friend online that calls me a cupcake and asks, Levi came in hot, bro. Like this is, the first image is a nice, bro, shut up. Are you kidding me? The first image is a nice, all right, I'm going to call your bluff on this. You mother... There's no way. There's no way. All right. I mean, as if I'm going to actually know if this is... What? All right, maybe it's not Levi. That's Levi. You might. Okay, Levi. If you did, I'm just going to say I think maybe so does Fuima. Bro, that's insane. How did you know that? Are you a train spotter? Levi, I want you to know, I think you're very funny. And I think it's funny because you came in so hot to this conversation, like originally asking me if I supported something absolutely ridiculous. But like you've been able to have a very good conversation this entire time. It's just like between the really just first message you put in there, not even like, hey dude, what's up? Or like a, hey chat, what's going on? It was like it was just like you got into the meat and potatoes of it all. Fuima, are you a Rust developer? Tell me that. Do you write code in Rust? How important is memory to you? You have to let me know these things, and I need to know who I'm dealing with right now. Also, Levi, it's not a diss, it's a badge of honor, and I think you might have to just accept the badge, brother. Oh, wow, guys, that was a heavy conversation. Ooh. All right, it's been 3 hours, and we've watched 46 minutes of this podcast. Fuima, were you there? Fuima, were you there when someone said that... Oh, wait, I think you were there. Somebody said that I wasn't contributing and I was just leeching off this one video. I I was leeching off this Alex O'Connor video and not adding any additional commentary. Bro, we've watched 46 minutes of this video and we've been on stream for 3 hours. Just like, they said they reported me because I wasn't adding any value. It's just like, brother, you just gotta wait. You gotta wait till someone like Fuima and Levi who've got the tism pop onto the stream. Then I'll start yapping. By the way, I also work in construction. Before that, I was a programmer. Oh, dude, you're 17 and you used to be a programmer? Dude. Levi, I want you to know I can't take you seriously, bro. First of all, how are you 17? You've already had a career as a programmer, and now you're in construction. That's one. Two, how are you going to say that I'm your favorite brown guy? Okay. Levi, I like you a lot. You're a strange character, but I like your energy. I wasn't here, no, but I did read the message. Okay, yeah, so you know what I mean. It's just kind of silly. Wait, what did you say? You would know if you saw what socks I'm wearing? Yo! Fuima, you understand me. Yeah. Yeah, Fuima knows. Yeah, I don't really mess with Rust, I'm not gonna lie. That is just it's just too much. But hey, Levi, I just want to say real quick, I see nothing wrong with what you said. I want you to know I'm also a little German myself, for as much as Americans like to claim their European heritage. But I fully take however you meant that to come off. That was a great compliment, and I love you, man. C# is fantastic. Vaderberg, welcome. I only more recently started doing C++. Never done C#, but I wanted to do C++ to mess around with Arduinos. As to kind of just gain some additional experience, not just in software, but just like start making some cool stuff. And then more recently, you see PewDiePie really getting into, first using Linux and then starting to build things. I think we're about to really have a renaissance. Excuse me, I have a hair in my mouth. A renaissance of nerdy guys being cool. I started coding at 10, being a young programmer. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Fuima. I'm not saying it's a weird thing. I mean like at 17, I was still in high school. To me, it's not a weird thing that Levi started young. It's more of like, how did you have a career in programming and then go into construction? Like, it just seems like I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was a senior in high school. And sure, maybe you did know, but it seems like, I don't know, it seems like you could have spent a little bit more time sussing out whether or not programming was the thing you wanted to do or not. But yeah, anyways, that's what I meant. I didn't think it's like a rare thing or anything. Yeah, Fuima knows. Every year is the year of the Linux desktop. Yeah, I feel like I would be... Here's the thing is I wanted to start this... So, long story short, I met some guy online through like a friend who works in the crypto space. Met some guy that had written like a Chromium fork. And I think that you would need to know C# to understand how to do that. And then I started looking into it, and it just seemed like an interesting little side project to learn a little bit more Just build stuff that I've never built before. I've never done something quite like that. He used it for seemingly like questionable purposes, like to buy and resell tickets, like from Ticketmaster. And while I don't really have any intention of using a Chromium, like the Chromium fork that I would build, I just thought it would be interesting to learn how to build one. My problem is I don't really know. I don't know any C#. I've done Solidity and I've done C++, and I feel very comfortable with both of those. So I don't know syntactically how much I would be effed trying to learn C#. I can't imagine it would be terribly difficult. Graduated high school at 14. Oh. Oh, wow. So, Levi, you're just killing it, dude. Well, good for you. Happy for you. Do you mind, do you want to tell us what your startup was? Because, I mean, like, I'm also interested in business and tech, and I mean, like, I'm building something myself. I think that's a really cool story. I think that it's not very rare for, especially nowadays, for people to learn coding very young. But it is much, much, much more rare to see someone that sold a company by 16. Also graduating at 14, I just like, I don't really understand how you do that. But anyway, I believe you. That's crazy though. Back then I made a bunch of fake accounts and used them to work as a programmer. Oh, so from what I could gather from what he did, Fuima, is you can bypass, like, Chrome itself has a lot of like safety measures that Ticketmaster uses to do checks on if someone is like continuously like hitting their server. It helps with spoofing fingerprinting by making a fork, as well as spoofing fingerprinting, something to do with, I think, IP stuff. I'm not talking just using a VPN, because I mean it's pretty easy to set up rotating IPs, rotating proxies. It was something about the fingerprinting that like regular Chrome does that he needed to make a forked version of it so that Ticketmaster didn't like prevent him from buying these tickets. It sounded like a very intense operation. It sounds like, yeah, I don't know, morally not the greatest thing, but like I asked this guy and he was making like, what was it? It was somewhere like in the millions. Millions a year from this product that he was building. What did you say? In most five. Yeah, I don't think it was just that, Fuima. I think it was a bit more intense. But I didn't get access to his source code. I would love to look at it sometime. Undetected Chrome driver. Well, so is there any issue though with the fact that you're still running a headless browser and some of these services can pick up if you're using a headless browser? What points Alex has been... Oh, Vaderberg, I appreciate you asking because we got really off we got really off topic. I am stoked to see that there are a bunch of people here that are devs. And it seems to me all of you guys are better devs than me, which fires me the F up. But TLDR, Vaderberg... let's see where I have to remind myself, bro, because it's been 3 hours and 15 minutes. So I don't really know. Okay. So what has been talked about? They discussed existence, like where we came from. What I'm going to be honest, man. I might just tell you, I don't really know. The last thing that we talked about was up to the brain and like the two different hemispheres of the brain. How the right hemisphere controls the left side of your brain and the left hemisphere controls the right side of your brain. They've talked about like surgeries that some people have done that are very unique, in which case they'd sever the connective tissue between the two hemispheres, which basically renders the person, I forgot exactly the term that he used, but it causes some motor function challenges. But yeah, anywho, I know that was a god-awful explanation, but we just got on to talking about other stuff, which is why the video's paused. And it has been paused for the last 2.5 hours. Basically, Vaderberg, have you seen this this podcast yet? Because this is still supposed to be the first time I watch it. I'm not going to get to finish watching it today, but have you seen the full thing? To address what Fuima said, you don't have to run it in headless. Yeah, I understand you don't have to run it headless, but can't they pick up if you're using... I guess... I guess maybe my point is like, unless you're doing some extra things to make it seem like it's like a real person, I think that there's a, like, even if you don't run it in, if you run it in headed mode, you're still going to run into the same issue. As if you were running it in headless. So Vaderberg, you're doxing yourself. Joke's on you, buddy. I've also already doxed myself. My name is in the title. American German heritage and studied German at college a bit. That's cool, man. That's actually really dope. I've been to Berlin and Munich once, and also Austria, and they were very cool places. I went for I studied abroad, and I also went to Oktoberfest, and that was the most insane experience I've ever had in my life, or one of them anyways. Wow, Vaderberg, I just gotta say, like, the fact that you kept up with my absolute dog water explanation of what was going on in the podcast is, like, impressive. But you also use C#, so I imagine that you're at least some sort of, like, engineer or something, and probably very smart. I remember seeing where the different sides had very different personalities. Oh, you've not seen the podcast, though? Okay. Yeah, so supposedly, so even Alex said at the top of the podcast that there's a lot of, like, pseudoscience involved, but the part that we do know to be true was, like, the splitting of the hemispheres, like, controls different parts of your brain, obviously, and that's where the idea of, like, the left hemisphere being a little bit more left side is like logic, and then the right side or left is intuition. I don't know, man. Yeah, he basically explained the two halves of, like, the way that we think. The creative and the more logic side is dictated by, like, the left and the right respectively, but there's still a little bit more in this section, so they could be talking about some other stuff. Follow along, and maybe we'll watch the rest of this another time. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hop on stream today, and we're gonna just watch maybe no one's gonna show up today, and I'm much happier that there's a lot of conversation. In my head, I was like, okay, might not get a lot of people hopping on today, which is fine. But at least at the end of the day, I'll have watched this podcast that I've been trying to watch for, the last few days. I'm so much happier that we ended up having such a good conversation. But yeah, I don't know when I'm going to get to watch this next because I'm about to go travel for the next 4 or 5 days. So I don't know. But yeah, I agree, Vaderberg. It's definitely interesting. I think it's definitely interesting. I want to know what they have to say because I've seen some reels, and TikToks on some of the conversations that happened later in the video. It looks like they're just kind of setting the stage for their framework of their belief systems right now. So yeah, I think we're getting to the good stuff in the second half of the video. But anyways, I digress. You live in Munich. Come here, brother. Let's eat bretzel and drink a beer. Bretzel, yes. So, Levi, again, I should get some nice deserved sleep. Appreciate that, man. It is 4 p.m. It would be a weird time for me to go to bed. On your note of pretzel and beer, brother, I would be so down. I don't drink beer anymore. But pretzels, fire. German potato salad is a gift from God. I had only had American potato salad for the first 18 years. No, my bad. The first 21 years of my life, I'd only had American potato salad. And then I go to Oktoberfest. I've had a few drinks, we'll say. And then I got served a pretzel and some warm potato salad, which had no mayo, but it was beef. It was pork cheek, sauerkraut and potatoes. And it was just I think I almost cried. I will never have boring potato salad again. Luckily my girlfriend's oldest sister only makes German potato salad for our get-togethers. Anytime we have a family barbecue. So yeah, I also made last Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, 4th of July. It was a little heretical, but I did make German potato salad on 4th of July instead of regular potato salad. So the crowds are doing something right. Yeah, Levi, I'm generally more of a early riser kind of guy, but my sleep schedule has been a little effed ever since I just quit my job 2 weeks ago, but my last job as working at this AI company in SF, I've just been staying up later and later because of work and working on some side projects I have. And I just haven't got my sleep schedule back on track. So I don't know, man. I try to sleep until 7 a.m. I have been going to bed pretty late, between midnight and 1, but yeah, I don't know. I like waking up early. I feel more productive in the first part of my day than I do in the last part of my day, but I know that a lot of developers, I think specifically, feel differently. I think because I'm self-taught, I'm probably one of those more new age cringe devs that it's optimize your sleep and work out and all this stuff and wake up early. I don't actually believe those things. I just think anecdotally, I feel better when I wake up early and go to bed earlier. But I think a lot of the stuff that people say is mostly anecdotal evidence. I don't think that you can really prescribe that one method is better than the other. Sorry, I had to check something. I have to get ready to pack for my trip soon, so I had to check the time. Let's see. Vaderberg, you're a nice guy, dude. I appreciate you joining along on the stream. German food, I wouldn't say is the best. What I would say, the best kebab is, no, it's not kebab. What is it? You guys call it something else there. Doner. I think about German doner probably once a week. There's I think about German donor, and then also what is it called? Currywurst. I think about those two things like way more than I should. And I have not found anything in the US that is remotely comparable to the way that the Germans do it. Yeah, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing donor, Levi. But languages are not my strong suit. I do one like mediocre, and that's the extent of my language skill. Wait, did you name your channel like that because you live in Phoenix, Arizona? No, bro. Fuima, my name is Phoenix. My name is Phoenix. Like, that is real shit. I will say, Levi, to your claim, and I know it was likely hyperbole. I'm trying to think of the German food that I've had that I've disliked. And I can't really think of any German food that I've disliked, but I have seen something. You have to let me know here if it's a culturally like important food, or if people genuinely eat this. Is I see a lot of like reels that'll show like a German eating like raw pork, and that sits very weird with me. I know the quality of pork is probably better in Germany than it is in the US. I would not dream of eating raw pork in fear of like dying near immediately. Oh yeah, dude. Well, I tried schnitzel in Austria. I tried schnitzel in Austria, and I mean, the reason I didn't say schnitzel at the top of my list is because, like, I mean, in the US, like, people like to joke about it, but I think we are kind of like, we do fried things here. What's fake? Nah, that's fake, bro. Oh, the pork thing? Dude, I don't know. Pork, German. Met. Yes. Yes, this stuff. Yes. Looks pretty real to me, bro. I don't know. Schnitzel is really good. The only reason I didn't mention it is, like, the US is kings of fried food. And also there's just so much other different great German food that I experienced that it just didn't make the top of the list. Germans, kill it at sausage. I mean, I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Like, it's just fucking good. You showed the time. My brain just instantly thought, what state falls under that time zone? And then the autism took the rest away. Well, bro, you took the one state that isn't Arizona the one state that doesn't abide by daylight savings? Which is just like, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but more so that, oh, okay, it is also 402. This is freaking confusing. They don't do daylight savings, right? Arizona, dude. Yeah. With the exception of the Navajo Nation, yeah. Well, I don't know if you guys were looking for a fun fact of the day, but here you go. The Navajo Nation does abide by daylight savings, but Arizona does not. Yeah, no, Fuima, you're chilling, dude. That's funny to me that you picked the one state, though, that I think is the most confusing when it comes to time zones. All right, Levi, you have to answer for Germany's crimes. So what is your take on Met? It seems like a very real food. Also, I'm gonna have to look into this undetected Chrome driver thing, just for research purposes, Fuima. Because because I'm not going to sit here and just read through all of this while we're on stream, because it sounds like a really boring way to hang out on stream with y'all. Dude. Okay, so how do I don't know, Met Brookton? You just said it's fake. We don't do that, brother. How are you going to tell me it's fake and that we don't do that? And then you go ahead and say, nah, for real though, it's good. You just can't look at it. You silly man. Levi, you're a silly guy. Yeah. I don't know if I want to. I'm not going to do that on my computer because I'm scared of what you're trying to get me to put into Google Translate. Met Broten. Yeah. Dude, that's what I said. Are you saying my pronunciation's bad? It's probably you're saying my pronunciation's bad. Let's see. Dude, why do you... Let's see.
Met broodjen.
Here.
Met broodjen.
Dude, there's no way I'm going to be able to... I can't pronounce that. Okay. Yeah, I'm tired, bro. I don't want to explain anymore at 1 a.m. No, Levi, I'm just messing with you, man. German is a very cool language that I have a very difficult time pronouncing. My girlfriend did her degree in Mandarin, and so she's like very good at languages. She's never done German. But yeah, languages are just hard for me. I don't understand tone marks very well. I just don't hear them. So yeah, it's just not I don't have a very good ear for languages. At least, that could be a little bit more of a fixed mindset, and I don't really believe in a fixed mindset. It's just not something that I put a lot of my skill points into. Yeah, but I think it's the only state that matches the time zone that I know off the top of my head. No, dude, Fuima, I'm also just messing with you, man. Yeah, no, I'm in SF. Phoenix is just my name. My girlfriend does content creation for like her full-time gig, and she does like DIY home reno stuff and like furniture flips and stuff, and her account is her name builds things. So I just kind of riffed off of that, and that's why I'm Phoenix builds things. Oh, are you guys familiar? Levi, good night, sleep well. My fellow gladiators, tomorrow's a day to be better than yesterday. Yo, Levi, you are just like, you're all over the place, brother, and I love that. I agree with your sentiment so much. I hope I'll see you around. It was good chatting with you. Also, good night, Cupcake. So there you go. That's a callback to what you were calling me earlier. Are you guys familiar with Proto-Indo-European? I've heard of it, but I don't really know. Pi. No direct record. Blah, blah, blah. Dude, that's a wall of text. Vaderberg, get in here. Tell me what I'm supposed to know about this so I don't read Wikipedia on stream. The unrecorded language from which all Indo-European languages are thought to derive. That's crazy. Yeah, okay, so I thought Germanic was the language. Following subbranches, Western Germanic, and English, Dutch, and German. Levi, who are you talking to, man? I thought you were German. if you're saying I'm your fellow Indian. That's the first time I've ever been, someone's ever thought I was Indian. But, you know, I'm going to take that as a, you know, I'll see you, buddy. Wait, yeah, so what was your point that you were making, Vaderberg, about the Proto-Indo-European language? At least you're honest, bro. I'm Vietnamese and a mix of different European things. Oh, I don't. I love Levi, brother. I don't take anything offensively. I genuinely think it's just funny because I'm experiencing this live streaming, reading the comments, being like, dude, I like catching up with what you guys are saying, not understanding the context fully sometimes, and I'm like, bro, like Levi's just out of pocket as hell. But yeah, Levi, get some sleep, bro. I'll catch ya. No. Funny enough, it almost was win, but it's not. It almost was. My parents came over here to the US during the Vietnam War. But before my grandmother remarried, she was married to a guy with the last name Win. So just find it interesting that we can reconstruct basic customs and religion of an ancient people based on language. Vaderberg, don't apologize. That's actually a really interesting thing to say. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, all right, Leva, that was pretty funny. Yeah, good night. Yeah, so Vaderberg, I think there's a good, so just, I don't mean to go off too much on a tangent unless this is kind of what you were thinking anyways. But to your same point, I think it's interesting, especially with like the recent discussion of what we found with the Dead Sea Scrolls and like what we've been able to understand from them, reconstructing the basic understanding of like some of the more ancient texts of which gospel was it? I'm actually spacing. I don't remember. What did the Dead Sea Scrolls cover? Dead Sea Scrolls. What did it cover? Okay, so it's various parts of the Bible. And just like the different translations that the Dead Sea Scrolls have, relative to like the Bibles that, you know, are produced today. I find that really interesting. It does beg the question though, like our understanding of things are somewhat incomplete. Oh, yeah, Vaderberg, yeah. Isaiah, yeah, Isaiah. I saw tangents are fun for like half the stream. Yeah. Yeah, Fuima, I appreciate you've just been putting up with it. I hope it's been fun for you, bro, because like I've been having fun just kind of seeing what, you know, where this conversation goes. Maybe at some point we will actually watch the rest of the podcast with Alex and Joe Weller to really know what their opinions were. I think it's much more fun to be able to have this conversation with you guys, and to know what your guys' opinions are. So I personally find them to be very fun. Textual criticism is super cool for sure. Yeah, you know, so I don't follow him because I deleted my personal Instagram account just because I got like I noticed myself using my phone too much. But there was a guy that I followed on Instagram who's super popular that I think he has a degree in what is it called when you study languages, or not languages, but like a historian of languages. I'm spacing on the word. I'm sure you know it, Vaderberg, but yeah, he was like just describing like the roots of these different words, and like the context of which we use them now, and how the meaning and the context evolves over time, and how the words were originally used are far different in a lot of cases than the way that we use them now. I think a specific example in my own life, I don't know if you guys are like East Coast, West Coast, middle of the country, a linguist. I think you're right. Yeah. I don't know why I couldn't come up with that word. Specifically in like San Diego, growing up in San Diego. And I guess this is more just a conversation of, obviously we know slang develops over time, but the word dank was used a lot when I was growing up. Like throughout middle school and high school, dank being like a good thing. Like it's, especially with context to food, it was like, oh, that burrito is super dank, right? And I didn't learn until way later in life, like after I graduated high school, that it meant like a damp cave or something along those lines. So I think that the more that we learn, and the more that we like the more historical artifacts that anthropologists are able to uncover, I think is really cool to be able to either reaffirm the things that we already know, or to maybe be like, oh, hold on, this has opened a whole new can of worms. Yeah, I think that stuff is super cool. Man, I gotta say, I really am. I think, first of all, Vaderberg, I really think that the things that you brought up were really interesting. I've now been on live for like nearly 4 hours, and it hurts me to need to cut this off, but I have a flight later that I need to get ready for. I have not packed for. So I think I'm gonna end the stream now. I know it's a little abrupt, but I hope that we can have this conversation again in the future, pick up where we left off. But I've really appreciated all of you guys that have hopped on. Fuima, you've been here since like basically the start. Levi has been the most. If it weren't for Fuima having this weird train knowledge, I would have said that Levi had the strongest tism today. But yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you guys, and it's gonna sound a little corny, but like, although I was trying to see the podcast with you guys and kind of chat about that more, I'm way happier that we got to talk about all the stuff we got to talk about. But yeah, don't mean to get